Hey y'all, it's Red, White, and Ruin here with a new Ghost Box urban exploration for you to watch from the safety of your home. Lucky you. Today we're walking through the dead at Cherry Hill Mall. Let's take a look, huh? I said in my chipper announcer voice. I hit stop on the video that I was recording inside. Being this perky all the time was exhausting. I sighed, took in my surroundings, and frowned. Jesus, what a dump. But it hadn't always been that way. At its peak, the Cherry Hill Mall was the state's shopping destination. Anchored by 6 big box stores, the mall was more than a place to buy useless junk. It employed thousands of people, fostered a sense of community, and kept the surrounding town's economy humming. I turned my camera back on. It doesn't look like much now, but man, to see this place at its peak would have been incredible. These corridors go on for flippin' miles. Look for yourself, Ruinistas, I said, pointing my camera down the long corridor. It went on until it ended in a little ball of light from the central atrium. I could probably do 10 episodes here, I said to the camera. The person who suggested this place said that I should start on this side of the mall. Said that there were some cool ruins, which, duh, but what gassed my pedal was the way they said weird shit happens here. That's something that'll get the old Red there in a flash. That was true. Urban exploration videos do well. I'm blessed really, but if you throw in a little supernatural flair, those videos break containment. The views skyrocket and you grow your audience. Some stay praying that your next exploration will have something spooky. Some leave when it doesn't, but your audience grows. Doing this as a job is all about growth. Growth without barriers, no ends. It's a grind, but it beats working in an office. I turned the camera around on my bright, smiling face. The people who came here, regardless of age, shared touchstones. Kids were wowed by the toy stores and visits to Santa in the fall. Teens came of age here, falling in and out of love, and finding that first job. Middle-aged folks would dash in to grab a last-minute present, or get a coffee and enjoy the people watching in the food court. Old folks walked the length of the stores in groups, laughing and staying active. The mall wasn't just a mall. It was a city unto itself. I turned the camera to show a rotting orange Julia stand. Once vibrant orange wallpaper faded and peeled, glass shattered. Machines were busted up and thrown on the floor. And then it died. The economy took a nosedive, traffic slowed, stores sputtered. The x-rays showed dark spots on the lungs. Removal was the only option. The mall cut out the tumors, but each time you go under the knife, the organ functioned with less and less efficiency. Eventually, the losses became too much, and that's all she wrote. I flipped the camera back to my now serious face. It didn't happen all at once, mind you. The big chains were bought out and stripped for parts. Stores closed. Those closures had downstream effects at malls everywhere. We're an image-obsessed culture. If something looks like blight, it's blight. Closed big-box stores are the blightest blights that ever blighted. As I walked toward the location that my tipster had given me, my feet crunched through trash and glass, and God knows what else, that littered the black and white tile floors. Sears went first, Toys R Us, Bed Bath & Beyond, and JCPenney. Without anchors, the place was adrift, and the mall lost its pull with the people. These long, sprawling walkways, chock full of smaller mom-and-pop stores and kiosks, fell as foot traffic slowed. Soon entire wings went dark to save on cost. Pretty crappy, huh? Let's forget about that for now. Want to see how far I can throw this rock? I picked up a rock and hurled it down the long corridor. It landed with a thud somewhere in the dark. I reached down, picked up another one, and I hurled it. It hit an overhead light, sending a rainstorm of glass down to the ground. The pinging on the tile echoed down the hall. Well, crap, gotta be better than that. I reached down and grabbed another rock, or what I assumed was a rock. On closer inspection, though, it wasn't some random chunk of granite. It was a hand. I dropped it before my brain discovered that it was a fake hand, a prop. I cackled, and it was the loudest thing in the quietest place. Jesus Christ, that was wild. Look, Ruinistas, at what I just hauled up. Nearly gave myself a heart attack. I flashed the camera down at the hand. It was realistic at first blush, but the illusion was ruined when you got to the fake blood and bones at the wrist. I picked it back up. Since I'm a solo show now, I should take this with me. Could always use a hand, right? You hear me, Ruinistas? A great joke, right? Right. I laughed. I'm such a dork. Don't worry, I'll edit that out. I stowed the fake hand in my bag and I kept on moving. I strolled past a former Lid's store. On the front door, the only remaining glass not broken, was a faded sign that read, Yellow Brick Investment Group, closed for demolition. Since the building was still standing and the sign was as weathered as a South Florida retiree, I didn't worry about any wrecking balls finding me. Yellow Brick Investment Group was the name of the owners of the mall friends. I did a little research into them and there wasn't much out there. It's not surprising. Much of commercial real estate is a shell game among shadowy groups. Was that the company determined that costs had overrun everything and shut it all down? It sat, rotting like a whale on a beach. The stink infected the town, and things went from bad to worse. At first, there were rumors that somebody would buy the area from Yellow Brick, but a sale never happened. Several deals died at the last minute. Cherry Hill's rot apparently even got into the local real estate game. Redevelopment. Like all these dead ghost boxes, redevelopment became a buzzy idea in the town. You have prime real estate. It should be transformed into something worthwhile. At various points over the last 20 years, Cherry Hill was supposed to transform into a modern drive-in, an apartment complex, a minor league baseball park, but none of those happened. Instead, it became an eyesore, a blight, a faded memory of better times. And that's my bread and butter. I'm always searching for cool, unknown places to explore. Thankfully, there's no shortage of dead and dying buildings. I've been to most of the states and been in buildings as diverse as an old insane asylum, an abandoned Taco Bell, and a rundown bottling plant. I've encountered upset homeless people, bored police, mouthy Karens, and a few spooky encounters that I couldn't quite explain. As I said, those videos always do numbers. To think I originally started this channel as a way to test the new GoPro that my ex had gotten me. Now it was my career. In a million years, I would never have imagined that this is a possibility. The person who contacted me through YouTube told me that there were all kinds of legends about this place. A little research showed that to be the case. When it was open, there were some people who went missing, but that's hardly unique to Cherry Hill. Every mall in America, and I would wager the wider world as well, had missing people cases. You can't throw that much humanity into one spot without our worst instincts getting a hold of us. And for these spooky encounters, well, I found a few videos and, like most of the time, they left me wanting. A lot of orbs or indeterminate sounds in the distance. That evidence is easily faked or exaggerated, but people primed to believe anything supernatural will do so if given the chance. I hate to say I use that philosophy to help grow my channel, but I do. Confirming belief through content is how half our economy works. In the business of capturing eyeballs, you do what you have to do. Wouldn't it be wild if that hand came to life and walked around with me like Thing? That would make me Wednesday, I suppose. I'm probably too cheery for Wednesday, though. Maybe Thursday, her distant, more upbeat cousin. Before I head into any building, I like to do as much research as possible about it. For one, it helps fill in the dead air of me walking around. Otherwise, it would just be 20 minutes of me singing or whistling to myself as I stroll among the ruins. I'm not that captivating. I've got to bring more to the table to keep my audience. And the other major reason is that I like to know what I'm going into. Why did the place get abandoned? Was it poor business practices, or was the building condemned? There's a world of difference in how you explore an area that might collapse on you versus one that sold a crappy product. As far as I could tell, Cherry Hill was the victim of a changing world and a rapidly shifting economy. As I mentioned, Yellow Brick Investment Group was new to me. These big builders are as shady as beach umbrellas, and following their money always ends up in a big circle. From the little I found, they own properties all around the world, and they strive to create unique shopping experiences for every kind of consumer. Sure, but it sells. I like to explore places at night because there are fewer looky-loos, and it adds to the general atmosphere of the videos. And ghostly encounters and at night go hand in hand. The threat of danger to myself, a sick but undeniable thrill for some viewers, helps push my numbers up. And that's why my Saturdays are not spent going on a date, but instead walking around an old dog food factory by myself. But Cherry Hill was the most beautiful place that I had ever been to. Weird to give that designation to a suburban mall, but it was true. And the grandeur, the pizzazz, the size, in its prime it must have been a sight to behold. Even in its current dilapidated state, the earmarks of past glory were everywhere. Its dominant colors were white, black, and gold, and remnants of that combination were everywhere. The tiles were all black and white, except for the thresholds of every store, which were all gold. Every time you entered a store, you were literally following the yellow brick road. A cheeky touch, but I love the idea. The overhead lights featured elaborate, retro, futuristic fixtures, the 1970s version of a future that never came. Interspersed between the irregular lights were the remains of chandeliers. On the ground below them, the dried out and broken ruins of wishing well fountains. Broken faces and figures adorned the central shaft of the fountain, but most had either been ripped away or had dongs drawn on them. The corridors themselves kept the retro-futuristic aesthetic going. The walls were decorated with a white metal mesh that curved and gave the impression that you were walking down large tubes on the deck of a never-ending starship. Advertisements, benches, and store openings broke up the mesh wall. Each entrance had rounded front windows of polished glass. Half of these were smashed to bits, but if you squinted, you would see what we lost. So, before I got here, I found the blueprints for Cherry Hill online. Crazy what a few bucks into Wi-Fi connection can get you. And this mall was single level but huge. Sprawl, not tall. A spoken hub design, with an anchor store at one end and long corridor ending in a glass-roofed food court atrium at the hub. If you squint, you can kind of make out some of the moonlight coming in through the glass. We are absolutely going to check that area out. Yellow Brick purposely designed Cherry Hill using a spoken hub system, and they've done studies on shopping habits and found that if consumers have even mild feelings of being stuck in a maze, they'll stop and browse just to pause the march. You browse at enough stores, the odds of purchasing something increase. You've seen this at IKEA. Paths purposely twist you around so you forget why you came there in the first place, but you end up getting more things than you intended. It's why you probably have a smorgasbord dresser in your house and/or a love of Swedish meatballs in your heart. I strolled down the corridors taking B-roll for my channel and occasionally throwing in some colorful commentary and jokes. Half of the time, none of this footage will get used, but I would rather have it and not need it than the other way around. Something along the wall caught my eye and it made me stop in my tracks. A door with a restricted personnel sign on it. Oh, that's my catnip. I have to see what's inside. That's the thrill of this job. Ruinistas, are you seeing what I'm seeing? If you're new here, let me tell you, nothing gets read like seeing a door to a restricted area. The rule breaker in all of us wants to go through that door. Needs to go through that door. We've got time for a detour, right? Right. I walked over to the door and twisted the handle. It snapped off. I held half of it as the door squeaked open. I kicked it with my foot and the hinges screamed like a banshee. Inside was a dark hallway that ended at a T-junction and split in two directions. Things skittered and fat droplets fell into standing water. And the funk was intense. Well, it smells horrible. Let's hope that's the worst of it. I said into the camera that I mounted in front of me. What do we think, left or right? I took a step through the door and made it 3 feet before something on the ground caught my attention. I squatted, brushed away some of the dirt, and my jaw dropped. Below me, through a small crack in the tile, there was the flicker of a malfunctioning fluorescent light. What in the... The rumble rattled my bones before my mind processed what was going on. The ground beneath me gave way. I swung my arms, trying to gain balance or take flight, whichever happened first. Since I didn't rise off the ground, my flailing became an attempt to grab the rusted rebar poking through the concrete. I missed. The fall was both long and short. A weightless plunge that at points made me feel like I was falling and flying. For a moment, it was fun and thrilling, until I hit the floor. I landed butt first, the pain exploding in my tailbone and radiating up my spine. By the grace of the Lord, the larger chunks of cement had missed crushing my body, but slammed closer than I was comfortable with. Several smaller chunks, though, strafed my ribs, legs, and arms. Crimson slashes across my skin arrived, as if an unseen artist decided that I needed a bit more color. Welts on my body rose like the dead. I rolled onto my side, my hands clutching at my tailbone and tears falling down my face. I screamed a string of curse words that would have left the Fifth Fleet embarrassed. My horrid words bounced off the walls back at me like taunts. I allowed myself to writhe in pain for a beat, rubbing my butt like a genie was going to come out. It didn't make the pain go away, but it soothed me all the same. When I finally stood, my body creaked like an elderly man climbing out of an easy chair. I arched my back. The pain rushed through every nerve down the main line. My vertebrae mimicked the snapping of a doo-wop song. Well, that sucked. Glancing up at the hole, it was obvious that there was no way for me to climb back up. The walls were high with nothing to hoist myself up on. The floor above that hadn't collapsed, but it still could. There were no conveniently placed ladders nearby. It's moments like this where I wished this was still a 2-person operation. An extra set of hands would be amazing right now. Just not the one that I had stowed in my bag. But since I was solo, I was trapped, stuck in the sub-basement of an employee-only area of a dead mall. I reached into my pocket and searched for my phone, but when I did, something sharp pierced my skin. I yanked my hand out, and a red dot slowly filled my thumbprint ridges. Probably not a good sign. Acting with more caution, I slid my hand under my phone and gently pulled it out. Shards of the cracked screen caught on the pocket fabric as I yanked it out. Once it was in my hand, I got the full scope of the damage. In short, it was totaled. Useless for anything except recycled parts and maybe the ugliest paperweight that you've ever seen. I tossed the corpse of a phone into my bag inside, and taking a centering breath, I let my brain reset. I had fallen into an area without a direct way out, but that didn't mean there wasn't a way out. I was sure there was an employee exit or a loading ramp somewhere in this labyrinth under the mall. To find salvation, I was going to have to do what I did best: explore. I gathered my wits, pulled up my flashlight, and headed into the darkness of the tunnel. Unsure of how long it would take me to get out of here, I knew that I'd be a lot more cautious walking around Cherry Hill when I resurfaced. I had been lucky the fall hadn't been more serious. You don't get lucky like that twice. And there were no lights down here, and once I got away from any stray moonlight pouring into the new opening, nothing was visible. Thankfully, I had just replaced the batteries in my flashlight. This narrow beam of white light was my only guide down here. There wouldn't be any maps with helpful "you are here" signs. Without this, I'd be doomed to the dark. There was a skittering behind me. I turned and my beam reflected on a pair of beady little eyes. Rats. If there was one, then there were more. I turned back toward the direction that I had been heading. I wanted to put as much distance between Remy and his pals as possible. Oh shit, no way. To my surprise, the hallway in front of me turned to the right. I quickened my steps. If I turned, it had to end in a door at some point. But as I rounded the corners, something that shouldn't be there at all struck me. Light. While darkness shrouded the mall above me, this hidden area was dimly lit by buzzing fluorescent bulbs. There wasn't much juice running to them, and they gave off a faint strobe effect, but there was enough light for me to stow my flashlight. Unlike the corridors above us, this hallway wasn't meant for consumers, purely made to shuffle employees from place to place. The lights illuminated the area directly under them, but faded before they splashed against the walls. The buzzing meshed with my footfalls, creating a discordant beat in the hallway. Electronic music via ambience. I kept my head on a swivel in case I came across any deranged people hiding down here. Dead malls were havens for transients of varying mental states. Thankfully, thus far, the only footsteps were my own. I walked a good 30 feet before the path turned left. I followed that for another 50 or so feet before the path turned right. I zigzagged down these passageways for about half an hour, deeper into the complex. I wasn't sure which way was which. I just kept on moving forward because I believed it would eventually lead me to an exit. After my fifth left turn, my salvation came into view. An exit sign over a door 50 feet away, and that put some pep in my step. I flipped on my camera. Oh, thank God GoPros are built like tanks, and I broke into my YouTube persona. Well, it's taken a lot longer than I thought, but someone finally answered my prayers. It's the exit. I'm so happy that I could skip. In fact, come on, let's skip. And I did just that. I skipped a good distance, blithely singing a cheerful tune. My pain subsided from these sudden bursts of joy. I would pay for it later. Spines rarely let you forget their trauma. But that was a problem for tonight. Right now, I beamed. Oh, Cherry Hill, you nearly got me. But red doesn't quit easily. Okay, Ruinistas, here we go. Let's try this exploration again, I said, holding the door handle. 1, 2, 3.
I pushed the door wide, ready to be blinded by buzzy parking lot lights or discover an oil-stained loading dock ramp. Maybe a set of stairs back up to the main level. But all that was there was another spaceship corridor, like the one I had fallen through. This wasn't an exit to the outside, but to another underground section of the mall. Oh, what the hell? Everything was exactly the same. White metal mesh walls and blacked out shops, buzzing overhead lights that led toward a central hub. A second central hub. A second central hub that shouldn't exist. Cherry Hill was a sprawl mall, not a compact one. There weren't levels. Everything was ground floor. If this were just an employee area, why were there old stores here? Where were the offices, the loading docks, the break room with that shitty lukewarm coffee? Where the hell was I? I shuffled out into the middle of the corridor and I stared down the endless stretch. If this was like its upstairs duplicate, it had to end at a hub. But from where I stood, there was nothing to be seen. And the white mesh metal flowing forward into infinity. A glance in the opposite direction revealed the same dimly lit walkway lined with closed doors, mall as far as the eye could see. It had to end somewhere, right? With only my sanity left to lose, I picked a direction and started hiking. To keep myself from going insane, I kept recording with my GoPro. If nothing else, the camera would be my Wilson as I tried to find safe passage off the island.
Well, things have taken a turn,
I said, kicking an old slush puppy cup into the shadows.
What I thought was a way out turned into a way into another section of the mall. A place not on any maps. I might find the fabled western route to the Spice Islands.
I walked, mumbling to myself, for about 10 minutes. Along the way, I passed closed and boarded up mall stores. Some brands were familiar, the Sharper Image or Spencer's Gifts, but the majority were local mom and pop stores. Best Cookies and Pies, Logistical Edge Computing, Fan Dan's Fan Den, a non-stop parade of dead or forgotten brands, rockets that exploded on the pad instead of shooting into the stars.
Boy, what I wouldn't give to hear someone else's voice right now,
I lamented.
Even a madman might provide Red with some information on how to get out of here. That and how the garbage can spoke to him and said that we were all disposable in the eyes of God.
A flicker at the far end of the corridor caught my eye. An overhead light briefly burned at full force. While it was at a distance I couldn't discern. 100 yards, 200, a mile. It didn't stay there. The blinking moved from light to light down the line, each time a little bit closer. My body went still. I was frozen. I held the electric blinking above me with the same reverence the people beholding the dance of the Northern Lights have. More than anything, this signaled to me that there had to be somebody else down here. Someone was manipulating the lights.
Hello?
I screamed, my voice echoing into nothingness.
Hello?
The blinking lights kept moving toward me, but the speed increased. One overhead winked out after another. Sections of the white mesh disappeared and reappeared as the burnout raced toward me. My lizard brain was sending out danger signals, but my higher brain wasn't listening. It was light. How dangerous could it be? But still my body took survival orders seriously, and without even noticing, I slowly backed toward the mesh walls, retreating into the shadows. But it never reached me. The light stopped and steadily blinked in front of the doors of a store about 60 yards from me. On, off, on, off, on, off. I came out of the shadows and yelled, "Is anybody down there? I'm lost." Every light instantly winked out. I stumbled back toward the wall as if something would come barreling down the corridor. After waiting for something to pass, it became clear that nothing was coming. I was probably safe. Well, relatively safe anyway. I switched on my flashlight and I continued my hike.
"Oh, so much for the overheads,"
I said to the red light of my camera.
"Thank God I packed a flashlight. If you're new to the channel, the time that I was visiting the Blanchard Witch House, I had forgotten too."
I didn't finish my story. The single overhead that had been blinking started back up. 1, 2, 3 blinks before it shut off again. Somebody was directing me toward the store. A lighthouse keeper sending a beacon of hope to a wayward vessel. "Hello?" I yelled. No one called back. Instead, the store's interior lights came to life. Low like the overheads, but all of them together made the shop glow like a smoldering fire. I called out again, but the only response I got was the faintest whisper of music playing. At first, it reminded me of carnival music, but with a sharper edge and more sinister. Something wicked this way comes. When the store's marquee illuminated, the creepy music made more sense. It was a Spook City store. The Spook City was a regional Halloween store that would crop up in old buildings starting at the end of September and continuing until the night itself. They were hyenas of the retail world, claiming the remains after the hard work has already been done. For whatever this reason, this was the place that I was being shepherded towards. Maybe I'd be lucky, and there would be an exit there. Like a moth to a flame, though, I went. Each step toward the store reverberated in my body, dread sneaking up my legs, finding any exposed skin and sinking its needle fangs into me, injecting my blood with a poisonous doubt. But I brushed the snake away and kept moving. I had no choice. I tried not to slow my stride, but my lower brain again intervened and did it anyway. I couldn't argue. As I got closer to the front door, the mix of all the animatronic decorations going off echoed around me. A cavalcade of shrieks, screams, evil laughter, and howls floated out of the front and filled the corridor. Through the broken glass, I spied dozens of red, green, and blue glowing eyes staring out at me. Metal creatures waiting to scare a flesh and blood person. My heart fluttered when I finally got to the opening. At the back of the store was the glowing red beacon that I had hoped for, an exit sign. I wasn't sure if it would lead me out or to another layer of previously undiscovered mall, but it was my best chance of escaping this place. Someone had guided me here for a reason.
Okay, well, I have to cross a Halloween store filled to the brim with robots designed to induce horror in order to...
All the lights inside the store went out, all except the glowing red exit sign. I sighed.
Update. I have to cross a Halloween store filled to the brim with robots designed to induce horror in the dark in order to get to the exit. Should be a piece of cake, I'm sure.
I pulled my flashlight back out and pressed the button, but no lights came out. I bashed it in my palm, but it stayed dead. Sighing, I stowed it back into my bag, cracked my neck, and took my first, unsure steps into the store. My first impression is that this place had been closed for a long time. Everything was covered in an inch of dust, and there were spiderwebs so large that they would trap Buicks. I leaned down and picked up a fallen sign that read, Satan's Little Helper, 1998's Scariest Decoration. I scanned the room but failed to find Satan's Little Helper anywhere nearby. The store was a maze of decorations. In front of me was a coven of dusty witches standing over a cauldron. Hallways led in opposite directions around the girls. Off to the left were walls of masks and other costume accessories. This is probably where my extra hand came from. To the right were even more elaborate animatronics and props. At some point, I assumed these paths reconnected, possibly toward a checkout counter in the middle of the store, but I couldn't tell in the dark. Pairs of unblinking eyes dotted the darkness. Every once in a while, a robot would get triggered and shriek or scream or laugh, rising or rocking or swiping off at the unseen thing that set them off. I assumed the rats that lived here were probably used to these things, and they paid them no mind as they zipped around them. Unlike my disease-carrying pals, though, I was a bundle of quickly unraveling nerves. And the central witch came to life, turning its head to me and rising ever so slightly.
Who goes there?
It said, adding a cackle and a scream as an exclamation point. Its eyes twitched back and forth, searching for something that it would never actually see.
We make food out of your kind.
More laughter. The two flanking witches joined in now, scanning up and down for kids with bags of candy.
You there? Who do you think you are? Oh, sister, I think this one looks delicious.
Cackling, it set off other robots in the darkness. Soon, a wave of screams came from all corners of the room. Agony, despair, death. All the flavors of a killing field rippled around me. I shivered.
Not a fan of this turn, gang.
I said to the camera. My eyes never left the main witch that had greeted me. It swayed a bit from side to side, its red eyes floating in the dark. The witch was a foot taller than I was. I glared at it and shook my head. I would have hated seeing you while trick-or-treating. Its head turned toward me.
You'll die in here.
And that couldn't have been one of the pre-recorded tracks, but the other alternative was that this thing was freelancing. That was impossible. I laughed, more nerves than anything, and said,
Hey, that was rude, you know that?
The whine of old mechanical parts kicking into gear filled the space as the witch inched forward. I took a step back, quickly spying the door in case I needed to split, before returning my gaze to the witch. Its eyes were burning bright crimson. It smiled so wide that the ancient rubber mask that covered the machinery cracked, and it flaked away at my feet, exposing its robotic gears. The witch whispered,
You'll never leave this place. You will die alone.
I took another step back. Yeah, that definitely wasn't pre-recorded. The witch raised its arms over its head as if she were praying to some unseen god and fell forward towards me. I screamed, stumbled back, and fell to the ground with a thud. My spine groaned and my mouth followed suit. The witch squirmed, attempting to crawl to me, but there was a pop from its back, and the scent of burned wiring filled the air. It went still. Holy shit.
Sister, did you tell this one they were going to die? Painfully.
The other added.
And away from any loved ones, assuming anybody could love this creature.
More cackling. These two didn't move, but something else on the store's robotic side did. Something a whole hell of a lot larger than a rat. A shadowy figure the size of a golf cart moved through the Halloween decoration area. It knocked down a few robots, sending them screaming as they fell face first on the ground. Bits of their broken bodies snapping off and skittering near my feet. It growled, a bassy, rumbling tuba blast that rattled the glass. I shrank to the ground and quietly crawled toward the mask side of the store. Hundreds of faces hanging on the wall. Every set of dead eyes trained on me as I scuttled through the dark, searching for a place to hide. Behind me, the large growling, unseen thing was pushing through the other decorations, sending them screaming to the ground. It was getting closer. I needed to hide. Swiveling around, I spied a table with various body parts on it, but rubber arms and bloody legs aren't what thrilled me. The floor-length tablecloth did, though. I was about to head for it when the shadow figure leaped through the air and landed on the mask side of the store. Its boxy head rose and sniffed the air. It was zeroing in on me. I needed to hide and fast. If only I had someone to help distract it. If only I had an extra hand. I nearly laughed out loud. I yanked out the old decoration that I had found and I hurled it to the opposite side of the store. It landed among the robots with a crash. One of them screamed as it fell to the ground. Without hesitation, the creature leaped toward the disturbance. That gave me enough time to hide. I lifted the skirt and found just enough space to cram under there. Without hesitation, I crawled in. The shop was dark, but under the tablecloth, I was in a black hole. I pulled my knees up to my chin and tried to fold my body in half. When I was a kid, I used to imagine that if I tried hard enough, I could transform my body into part of the surrounding walls, to blend seamlessly into the background until I popped out and surprised people. I tapped that part of my brain again, this time omitting any desire to surprise anyone. Outside of my little world, the massive creatures were slinking around, knocking over displays and products. Its snuffling and growls intercut with random cackling and haunted howling. When this creature lumbered down an aisle, the ground shook. Even though I had no idea what this thing was, my brain started filling in the blanks. It was something so horrific that it would easily be a top-selling decoration at Spook City.
Where did it go?
One of the witches asked, the cheap wiring in its voice modulator sending its voice up and down the vocal register like a talking slide whistle.
It's alone and scared, as it should be.
The other said.
It's only a matter of time.
The slide whistle witch said.
They all fall eventually.
More cackling. Like two old crows in a fence watching field hands toil in the sun, content to only observe and reap the benefits of someone else's sowing. The creature finally crossed back over to the mask section of the store. Each thunderous step shot through my body like a bullet. I inched back from the hem of the skirt as if those precious few centimeters would matter if this thing knocked over the table. I would kill for another set of eyes. Another brain to bounce escape ideas off of. When I first started urban exploring, it wasn't a solo affair. My ex and I used to go out together. In fact, that was who had gotten me into it. I had always been curious, but I never took the leap. My ex said, take new chances, and I decided why not, for a New Year's resolution that had morphed into a living, breathing thing. Working as a duo was fantastic. It bonded us and deepened our connection. Suddenly, we spent hours trawling for fresh places to explore and excitedly gushing about their weird histories. We made new friends and memories. Ironically, in the rotting bones of these old buildings, I believed that we were building a solid foundation, but it turns out that the rot gets us all eventually. The loud footsteps rattled my gear. The thing lumbered down the aisle, knocking things over as it moved, unaware of or not caring about the destruction that it left in its wake. I held my breath and I closed my eyes. I wished it would go away, but wishing never did anything but raise expectations and precipitate quick downfalls. After all, I wished my relationship hadn't ended, and now I was stuck under a table in a twisted, dead mall with some bloodthirsty creature searching for me. It walked past the table. It snuffled and the air made the tablecloth waver. The stench of the breath infested my nasal passageway. Roadkill cooking on asphalt. Vomit raced up my throat, but I chewed it back. My body trembled. My salvation was as thin as the tablecloth keeping me hidden. As this thing circled my table, more movement came from the other side of the store. Near the witches, another decoration was slowly dragging itself across the chipped tile floor. It was sturdy, metallic, and as it scooted along, it would occasionally let out a goofy Halloween howl. Something that would scare trick-or-treaters but would leave adults laughing. As it approached, I wasn't laughing, nor was I the only one surprised. The creature spun around to stare at the creeping abomination. As it did, its bulk knocked the front leg of the table. It rose and my stomach flipped. As it landed, the rubber-covered knob squeaked against the tile. I inched myself back, trying to keep my feet from sticking out but failing. My shoes skidded against the tile, squeaking like a distressed mouse, and it exposed my position. But in the hubbub of the crawling robot and the growling beast, the noise went unnoticed. Thank God for minor miracles. Scrunched up but secure under the table, I concluded that this wouldn't last. One of these two groups would find me. Instead of working together, these two evil forces were on a collision course. If they fought, I could escape. And by the time that one side beat the other, I would be well on my way to my car. I had to flee. And to make a seamless escape, though, I needed another set of eyes. I cursed my ex again for his shit before an idea popped into my brain. The GoPro. I unhooked it from the harness and placed it on the ground. My hands were trembling so bad when I placed it on the tile, the edges tapped against the ground. I needed my other hand to steady my grip and stop the tapping. I locked my eyes on the screen as I inched the lens out. At first, it was an all-black tablecloth, but as I pierced through the veil, a picture formed. The low light made the camera take a while to find something to focus on, but when it did, my heart plunged into a bath of my own stomach acid. The crawling decoration was a black-robed reaper with a busted pumpkin for a head. The right eye was an artificial candle that flickered in the dark. Its left eyeball was out of the socket and it bounced along next to its body as it slithered along the floor. A snail trail of eyeball liquid created a trench in the layers of dust. As disturbing as that was, the creature blocking its path made it seem like a Disney cartoon. It was a person, or at least it had been one at one time. The bulk of the body was smaller than I had assumed, but it was still about double the thickness of an average man. Matted brown hair that resembled scaled armor covered its body. At first blush, its limbs appeared too short for its body, but once I moved the camera, it was obvious that it had folded its limbs in half, and it was moving on hardened elbow and knee joints. If it stood and fully extended itself, it would easily be 9 feet tall with a reach that would be the envy of every pro basketball player in history. And while the body was in the same realm as man, the head was not. Above the powerful neck and shoulders sat a large, squat head lined with deep, oozing wounds. Green pus mixed with bright red blood, giving the face a gleaming sheen. It would weep the concoction onto its matted chest hair where it would harden. If drops hit the floor, they sizzled and left little burn rings in their wake. Its large, round, yellow eyes bulged out from the oozing wounds, never blinking, save for when a silver tongue darted out to moisten them. When the pumpkin-headed reaper got within striking distance, the creature crouched and it growled. The robot ignored the warnings and kept following its code, ever moving forward towards me. It never even got close. With blurring speed, the creature shot out its folded arms and snatched the robot off the floor. It held its body over its head and it let out a primal scream that shattered the remaining Spook City windows. With effortless grace, it tore the Pumpkin Reaper in half. The mechanical innards sparked and smoked. It hurled the remains in opposite directions. The bottom half skidded back towards the robots, sliding in front of the witches, who bellowed as its battered brethren came to a halt near their feet. They were babbling in some archaic language, but I didn't need a translator to know that they were pissed. The top half of the body cartwheeled through the air and slammed into the wall of masks near the table. I winced as it struck the rack. The slap of rubber masks landing all around me, like somebody with plungers for feet walking up a wall. One slid under the tablecloth and it landed at my feet. A pale white face with a massive grinning mouth stared up at me. The crimson of its gums was the only pop of color, save for the black lips and yellow dagger teeth. Its wide, deep-set eyes were cloudy white plastic that conjured up demonic possession. I nudged it away from my foot and pretended that it wasn't there.
Sister, we're the only ones who are supposed to capture the customers.
One witch said.
Not this abomination. Just because it used to be one of them doesn't mean it gets to capture them,
Came the response from the other witch. The creature sniffled and let out a warning growl. It sat back on its haunches, staring at the robot side of the room, ready to strike if the need arose. I didn't understand this conflict. They both wanted to get me but focused on getting each other instead. Whatever. While these two groups were having a pissing contest, I would sneak over to that exit and get out of here. I adjusted my pack and stowed away my GoPro, readying myself for the journey. Moving quickly and quietly is a skill in the urban exploration world, and I become quite good at it. The trickiest part would be exiting the table, but after that it would be... The possessed mask flapped like a manta ray's wings, those cloudy white globes staring up at me. The brows narrowed and the grin grew wider. It started hooting like a baboon, sending out a warning to anyone that it had found me. "Oh, screw this," I yelled, stomping my foot into its face and flinging it away. I stood, pushed the table off me, and sent it flying towards the creature. The creature and the robots turned their attention toward me. On the walls behind me, the remaining masks all started screaming, some flinging themselves off the walls and rolling toward where I stood. The creature growled and stood, fully extending its legs. Its head scraped the ceiling. It unfolded its arms and its knuckles tapped the floor. Behind him, the robots all shuffled in place, their hardwired brains struggling to process what was happening. And guided more by feelings than logic, I understood that. I ran. Masks hooted, goblins, clowns, serial killers, and others fluttered in the breeze, attempting to dive bomb me. I swatted some away, but others landed and sank their teeth into my flesh. I screamed and took the corner hard, slamming into a rack and sending it and me sprawling to the floor. And the creature leaped, landing directly over me. It roared, and the stench of decaying bodies made my eyes water. The pus oozed into long droplets that hovered over me, waiting for when gravity would take control and send it screaming toward my face. A few shook loose, missing me but leaving burn marks on the floor. I glanced over just as a mask jumped from the top shelf and came floating down toward me, screaming and snapping its rubbery teeth. Without hesitation, I snatched it out of the air and hurled it at the creature's face. It had difficulty wielding its gangly arms to stop it, and the mask sank into the nape of its neck. It bit down, and the creature let out a scream and scrambled to pull it away. Another mask skipped me and jumped at the creature. The rest followed suit. The creature was being swarmed. It stumbled away, doing its best to yank off any of the parasites, but finding the task nearly impossible. It roared, shrank back its arms, and plucked them off. I didn't hesitate to take this moment of chaos to make my escape. Kicking away from the mass of moving horror in front of me, I sprang to my feet and spied the exit sign at the back of the store. The glowing crimson was a welcome beacon in the dark. A zombie scarecrow's mask came screaming at me, but I swatted it away and sprinted for the door. 10 feet. I tore through the maze of aisles, occasionally clipping them and sending the contents flying to the ground, but I kept moving. 8 feet. Rustling somewhere in front of me. It had to be the robots. The exit was on their side of the store. Whatever. 5 feet. My ankle caught the corner of the shelf and pain exploded up my leg. I sprawled on the ground and skidded toward a pillar. My back slammed into it, and a second explosion of pain racked my whole body. Every bit of air rushed out of my lungs. I struggled to gather some back. My face reddened and my chest tightened. The muscles along my spine twitched in pain. I finally sucked in a breath, my color returning to normal, and I rolled onto my stomach to push myself up. The robotic witch's boot stomped down in front of me.
You aren't getting away that easily!
It said with a cackle. And behind me, the other witch walked out of the shadows, brandishing its massive cauldron spoon. It pointed it at me and spat.
We're out of treats. You'll have to settle for the trick.
I was surrounded 2 against 1. I was alone, always alone.
They'll free us if we bring her in.
The first witch said.
Finally.
Came the response. It snapped the spoon at my midsection like a slap shot. My rib cracked and at least 2 of them broke away from the cage. The muscles contracted and tightened. The boa-like vice grip made me gasp from the pain. It reared back to hit me again. As the spoon came slamming toward me, I anticipated it and grabbed on tightly. I yanked the robot to the ground and it smashed nose first into the tile. Its head popped off and rolled away, the sparking and smoking circuits crackling behind it. The other witch shrieked. I popped to my feet. Pain gripped my body and I should have just laid down and rested for 10 years until I healed. But I was running on spite and rage. Without hesitation, I swung the spoon at its head. It snapped hard to the left, sparks crackling from the wound. Raising the spoon high over my head, I brought it down with all the anger coursing through my veins. The blow dislodged the head and sent it skittering down the aisle with the other. Its body momentarily stood before crashing down to my feet in a pile of gears and cogs and Halloween-themed slogans bursting from its melting voice box. I dropped the spoon and burst for the exit. As soon as my hands hit the smooth metal bar, Relief rushed through my body. My various injuries dissipated. I sighed and pushed open the door. A wave of cool air came rushing in. My skin prickled. I gave one last glance at the chaos of the Spooktown store. Only God had a clue what the hell this was, but I was glad that I was leaving it behind. I stepped to the other side. I let the door close behind me and took a few cautious steps into this void. It was dark. I reached out and tried to find the wall, and my fingers finally found it. The tips curled around a cool metal mesh. About 100 yards in front of me, an overhead light popped on. "No," I whispered. "It can't." The light exposed my fear. More corridors, more closed doors, more mall. "It can't." The lights raced towards me. I hung my head. Tears stung my eyes. I had never felt more alone than I did in that moment. I dropped to my knees and sobbed into my hands. And behind me, a small, timid voice cried out, "Hello?" That's my childhood house. I wasn't turning down the street that I grew up in. I wasn't standing near the large oak in the front yard of the house where I had lost all my baby teeth. I wasn't sitting inside the kitchen, where on my 15th birthday, I accidentally dropped the cake that my mom had baked, which made my family laugh so hard that we shed tears. No. I was holding an oil painting at a Goodwill on the other side of the country. "That can't be possible," my husband said. "It can be possible, Parker, because I'm holding the flipping painting and telling you that this was my house. Exactly." 1, language, he joked. 2, can I say something without you jumping down my throat? Parker asked, his voice even. "Fine," I said. "Is there an outside chance that this just looks like your childhood home? I mean, you grew up in the suburbs. A lot of those houses were pretty cookie cutter, no?" I hated to admit that he had a point, but as I stared at the house, I couldn't come around to that line of thinking. This was my house. The oak tree looked the same. Hell, the roses in the flower beds were the same size and color as I remembered them. I shook my head. "No. I mean, I hear you and you're not off base. But dude, this is my house." I pointed at the porch. "I broke that railing trying to do a ballet spin and I fell into the bushes." "You? Miss 2 left feet. Senorita trips a lot. You tried to do a ballet spin." "To be fair, I did the spin. I just didn't stick the landing." A minor detail in the world of dance, the landing part. "I landed on the bushes right here," I said, pointing to the painting. "Hold on, I have to send a photo to my mom." "Does she have any old house photos?" "Of course she does. You've met her, right?" I had Parker hold the painting and snapped a few pictures. I sent them over to Mom and asked if she had a photo to compare it to. The message came back a minute later. "Oh my God, that is our house. Weird. Here's a photo I have saved on my phone." Another ding brought us the photo that she mentioned. It looked exactly like the artwork in my hand. I showed Parker and he nodded. "Jesus Christ, he said. And that is it. I told you. That's wild. Is it a print or a real painting? I ran my hand across the art. There was a palpable texture to the brushstrokes. Sometimes a print may have varnish applied to give the impression of brushstrokes, but this wasn't that. I think this is real, but let me check something else, I said, walking toward the wall of ugly lamps. I plugged in a lamp and held the painting in front of the bulb. Some artists will draw the picture first with a pencil before painting. Sometimes you can see those strokes when you hold it up to the light. Staring at the oak tree in the painting, I saw the telltale graphite marks. It's real, I declared. And my minor in art history is still paying dividends. Who painted it? A slash of red paint in the corner mimicked his signature, but Parker and I stared at it as if it were written in Minoan Linear A. Parker traced the paint with his finger, forwards and backwards. The first name may be George or Jeff. I think George. Look at how it flows. He retraced the letters and it made sense to me. Okay, what's the last name? Hell if I know. I tried Parker's finger tracing. It didn't work for me. It felt like I was tracing a line drawn by someone with too much caffeine in their system. These didn't seem like actual letters. It might be Moffat, a soft voice said from behind us. We turned and saw that a Goodwill employee had appeared. She was a short, frail-looking, elderly woman with a hairstyle that resembled a well-constructed cumulus cloud in both color and shape. Moffat, I said. I think that's an M, she said, pointing to two humps. And then it kind of circles into an O, and the double Fs. The I and the T are somewhat stylized, I think. Oh, artists being artists. I looked at it and yeah, it kind of looked like Moffat. I can see it now. George Moffat, you think? Oh, I do. Beautiful piece though, don't you think? Yes, I said. It looks exactly like the house that I grew up in. I showed her the photo that my mom sent. Oh, how strange. Right? I grew up across the country. Why is this even here? You know, when I was younger, there was a company that would paint your home for you. House painters? Parker deadpanned. Ignore him, I said. He doesn't know how to act in public. She laughed. Oh, I understand. I have one just like him at home. That's why he's at home. I laughed. You are teaching and I'm taking notes, ma'am. Anyway, they would come paint portraits of your house. It was a thing for a few years. And this looks like one of those. There may be a company name on the back under the frame. I flipped the painting over and gingerly removed the frame. Sure enough, there was a small, faded sticker that read, Cozy Home Portraits Company. There wasn't any other information. I made an impressed noise. Would you look at that? Now I have a jumping off point to find out what this is all about. Thank you so much. Marge, thank you. Sorry again for this guy. Oh, Marge, please forgive me. You're a gentle woman and a scholar. Marge leaned into him and nodded at me. Oh, you're punching above your weight with her, kiddo. Keep her happy. Parker laughed, wrapped his arm around my hip, and pulled me in for a hug. Marge, that's the best advice I've ever received from a Goodwill employee. If only your barber had given you good advice, you could have avoided that haircut. I burst out laughing, and Parker did too. Oh, Marge, I hope to grow up just like you. Aim higher, dear. But you find a guy who can take a joke. That's a win. You guys want to get that or you're still debating? I looked at Parker and he nodded. How can we not get this, even if it's just for the story? Marge smiled. See, you can learn. Come on, kids, I'll ring you up. When I got home, I immediately began researching the Cozy Home Portraits Company. I had a hard time finding anything. Most of the search results were links to people on Reddit asking the same questions. Apparently, there were a lot of folks like me who were surprised to find their childhood homes immortalized on canvas. One commenter said something that stuck with me. "Hey Parker, listen to this," I said, reading the post. "My mom says she remembers someone approaching her and asking if they could take a photo so that they could paint the house later. She had told them no at first, but they said that they would do it for no cost. Mom agreed and assumed she would get the painting at some point, but she never heard from the company again." What's the next commenter say? "Oh, this sounds fake," I read. Kind of a dickish response, no? "It's Reddit," he said, shrugging. "Maybe they just used the house for inspiration and sold the paintings to commercial houses for reproductions. Well, then why bother involving the homeowners at all? Maybe to assuage their worries of somebody standing outside their home and snapping photos of their house," Parker suggested. "I mean, anybody could take a photo of our house and I would have no idea unless I saw them do it." True. It's weird, I'll grant you that. But I think I'm on the right track. Commercial art, Americana stuff. And that was to be it. He may have been onto something, but that answer didn't feel right. I couldn't work out the logic. If this company had been around for a while and painted portraits of homes all across the country for commercial sale, why wasn't there any record of them? No stories online, no official business records, no known CEO or lists of artists or anyone. Hell, even searching for the name George Moffat didn't yield results. My mind told me that there was something off about this. A sense of dread loomed over the whole thing. I let it marinate all day to see if I'd reconsider. Shocking to no one, I didn't. I told Parker as much as we got ready for bed. "You're reacting that way because of what's happening in the world right now," Parker said, yawning. "There are real evil people out there, but they aren't painting pictures." "Hitler painted pictures," I said. He gave me a deadpan stare. "You know what I mean. I just can't let it go, you know. It's odd. Odd that it was done at all. Odd that it traveled all the way out here. Odd that I found it. Odd stacked on odd stacked on odd. Turtles all the way down." "What?" I said, crinkling up my face. "What do turtles have to do with anything?" He laughed. "Oh, nothing, just a dumb expression." He yawned again. "Why is this bothering you so much? Some random company painted and sold pictures of my childhood house with nobody knowing about it. It's odd," he said with a smile. "Yeah, very. It's just not sitting right with me." Parker yawned for a third time. My melatonin is kicking in here. Get some rest and see how you feel in the morning. If you still feel off, maybe call your mom and see if she has a story to tell. She might know something." He didn't wait for my response. Instead, he rolled over, shut off the lamp, and turned on our sound machine. As digital thunderstorms rolled into our bedroom, I lay down on my pillows but didn't fall asleep. This whole thing smothered my thoughts as much as my weighted blanket did my body. I would call Mom tomorrow, see what she knew. If anything. I heard light snores coming from Parker's direction and I sighed. That man could fall asleep even if the house were on fire. I flipped on YouTube, found something to help me sleep, and I closed my eyes. Or I would have, if I hadn't seen our front porch light turn on. A cold touched my brain and froze the rest of my body. The light going off didn't mean a prowler was trying to jimmy open our lock. It could be a bug flying too close to the sensor, or a sleepwalking squirrel. Improbable, sure, but they were better than the alternative. I looked over at Parker. I didn't want to wake him, but I also wasn't keen on investigating alone. While I was going over the pros and cons of getting out of bed, I heard a noise in the kitchen. That made the decision easy. I elbowed Parker and he rejoined the waking world. "What?" he asked, his voice a blend of exhaustion and annoyance. "Our front porch light went off," I whispered. "Raccoons or possums tripping the light," he said. "It's not worth waking me." "I know, but I heard somebody in the kitchen." His eyes zinged open. In a flash, he was on his feet and grabbed the bat that we kept near the bed. He quietly inched along the wall until he got to the bedroom doorway. He peeked out and scanned the room before turning back to me and shrugging. I pointed to the kitchen again before popping up and joining him on the wall. Parker wasn't pleased. He told me, not in words but vigorous nods, to go back to bed and wait. I didn't. He gave in and we made our way out of the bedroom, me walking directly behind him like some backwards waltz. I saw nothing. That went double after Parker slammed his hand on the switch, flooding the room with light and damn near blinding me in the process. I let out a painful yelp and I covered my eyes to adjust. I heard Parker sigh. "We're good. Nothing in here." "Oh, you gotta tell me before you do that," I said, finally checking out the room. Everything initially looked washed out. "I'm nearly blind." "I wanted the element of surprise," Parker said. "Well, you achieved it. All I see now are a bunch of little diamonds everywhere." He walked into the kitchen. "Your intruder is nothing more than a fallen salt shaker," he said, holding up the culprit. "Oh." And like I said, the porch light was probably from a raccoon or something. I'm going back to bed. You should too. He walked past me, patted my butt as he did, and headed back to bed. I was about to join him when my eyes had landed on the painting. I walked over to it and stared. In the store, looking at it had flooded my emotions with joy and happiness. But now, there was none of that. Unease seeped into my blood and rushed through my body. Something was different about the painting. I couldn't put my finger on what had changed, but I knew that something had. It was giving me chills. I grabbed a nearby cloth napkin and draped it over the artwork, like a coroner covering a dead body. My thinking was that if there was something supernatural about this thing, the napkin would keep it at bay. It's dumb, I know, but it made sense at the time. "I couldn't believe it when you sent me that picture. That is so wild." Mom was too chipper for this early in the morning. She always was, though. A real rise with the early bird kind of gal. And that wasn't me. I still had bedhead as I sipped my cup of coffee. Parker, another early riser, cooked breakfast. Yeah, I thought so too. Somebody told me a company used to go around and paint pictures of homes. They would ask the homeowners beforehand. Any memory of that? Oh, not that I can remember, but back then it was mostly your father who spoke with the salesmen. I found them unseemly. I can't imagine he would allow somebody to do that. Rest his soul. Yeah, I agree, Dad was pretty private. We had a neighbor who was a painter, though. Carl. No, that wasn't it. Craig. Gosh dang my ancient brain. Bonnie, don't get old, it's hell. I'm trying not to. It's why I do my nightly skincare routine. Yeah, it's intense, Parker added with a smirk. Oh, what was his name? Oh, it's been years since I thought of him. Craig Morris, something like that. He didn't live near us for long. Oh, Dad didn't like him. At all. Why? Oh, Craig was one of those people who were just constantly irritating. The human equivalent of a popcorn kernel stuck in your teeth. He rubbed your father the wrong way. I don't remember Dad talking about him. Oh, he didn't around you, but with me, oh boy. Craig used to walk by the house all the time, always whistling Pop Goes the Weasel for some reason. He would stand too close when he talked to you. He would leer at me when I was outside hanging laundry on the line. He would never get the hint that I wanted to be left alone, even though I was always short with him, especially after he said that you were growing up nicely. Gross, I said. I was 10. Yeah, like I said, he was a weirdo. But again, most of those artist types are, I suppose. You remember your Uncle Walter? He made those ghastly papier-mâché skulls. They used to be all over his house. It was like walking into some cannibal's hut whenever we would go over there. But he was good at making them. Who would want them is another thing altogether. He gave us one and I made your dad keep it in a bag in the garage. Oh, don't bring that ghoulish shit in my house. As my mom rambled about skull shapes like a Victorian phrenologist, a thought came to me. I looked down at the painting and traced the painter's name. Mom, could his name have been Craig Moffat? Parker looked over at me. I nodded down at the painting and traced what I thought the letters were with my finger. He hit his forehead with the spatula and shook his head. Oh my God, yes, that was it. Craig Moffat. God, what a blast from the past. He really was a weird little freak of a man, my mom said, laughing. He used to wear these tiny little shorts and he did not have the legs for them. Looked like 2 toothpicks stuck in an orange. Mom droned on a little longer, but provided nothing of substance beyond Craig Moffat's horrid legs. But she had given me some new information, the artist's real name. As soon as I hung up, I grabbed my laptop. Craig Moffat, not George, Craig. Yeah, I see it now, Parker said. And we should have never trusted Marge. I didn't like the cut of her jib. Oh, babe, her jib was flawless, I said, turning to the painting. Her eyes, and not so much. Hey, to be fair, we all agreed it was George Moffat. There he is, Craig Moffat. I turned the computer around and showed a web page dedicated to his art. Parker leaned down to get a closer look. His legs do look like toothpicks stuck in an orange. Rolling my eyes, I turned the laptop back to me and clicked on the man's About Me page. It was illuminating. Craig had quite the little career. He had worked for a few newspaper outlets, a few magazines, some ad campaigns. His stuff was good. There was a list of known works. There are a few house paintings listed here. It has to be him. Has anybody mentioned how odd this is? Parker said with a sly smile. It's catching on. Maybe you saw your home as a happy family home and wanted to capture it for that company. Is there a contact page? Oh, there is, I yelped. I read the page out loud. If you have any questions about Craig or his work, please feel free to reach out here, I said. Oh, that's great. You can email him and ask directly. Moffat Estate at moffatart.com, I read. Oh shit, he's dead. Oh, that shouldn't matter. Maybe the guy who runs the estate can answer your questions. I nodded. It was worth a shot. I started composing a message and Parker went back to breakfast. I glanced at the artwork on the table next to me. Something about it picked at my brain. Hey, I meant to ask, have you been watching professional wiffle ball games on our YouTube? Oh, yeah, I've started turning on games after your melatonin kicks in. Puts me right out. Uh-huh. Are you a wiffle ball fan? Oh no, don't be silly, I said laughing. I just happened to cross it one night and fell asleep like 10 minutes into a game. It's better than ocean waves. Which game was it? Rhinos against the Storks. Oh man, those two teams hate each other. The Storks have won the last 3 series behind Dustin Braddock's nasty banana ball. I stopped speaking because I could feel Parker's smug smirk on his face. I looked up and caught it with my own eyes. Not a fan, huh? What the hell is a banana ball? Hey, look, they emailed me back already, I said. What the hell? Maybe there isn't a lot going on at the Moffat estate. Hi, Craig Moffat was my father. He did several pieces of local homes during that era. I would love to discuss this with you. Can we set up a call? Yeah, so there clearly isn't a lot going on at the Moffat estate, Parker said. I'm gonna say yes. I think I have to. If for no other reason than my own sanity. Yeah, go for it. I can be there for the call if you need me. So I set up a call with the estate for later that day. Hopefully there would be some information that I could use to stop the itch in my brain. Parker served me breakfast before he got ready to head out to the gym. You never told me what a banana ball is, he said, placing the plate in front of me. Oh, it's a sidearm slurve, a strikeout pitch, nearly unhittable if Braddock is on his game. Parker gave me a quizzical look. I sighed. Not a fan. After Parker had left for the gym, I went back over to the painting. It was still sitting in the last place that I had left it. It still had the napkin over it. The bad vibes that I felt earlier was still there. In fact, they had grown worse. I didn't even want this thing in my house anymore, covered or not. And despite my misgivings, I pulled the napkin off the painting and I gave it a once-over. I felt my stomach gurgle and my throat went dry. Looking at this now literally caused a physical pain. It didn't make sense. Where's the front door? I suddenly asked myself out loud. The front door of the house was gone, blacked out like an actor with perfect teeth coloring in one to look sufficiently destitute for a role. I scraped where the door had been with my thumb. No fresh paint. It was like it had always been that way, but it hadn't. I checked the photo that I sent to my mom to confirm. What in the... There was a creak on the basement stairs. There very much shouldn't have been a creak on the basement stairs. The basement was home to nothing but dust, Christmas decorations, and my ugly childhood couches that we didn't have the heart to throw away. Since none of those things can walk, this made no sense. I tiptoed to the knife block and pulled out a butcher knife. With my phone in my free hand, I used my nimble thumb to unlock it. I was ready to dial 911, but as I stared at my reflection in the knife blade, I questioned whether I was prepared to stick it into another person. I wouldn't know that until it came to that moment. I very much prayed that that wouldn't happen. Another creak near the top of the stairs now. It was getting closer. I flexed the grip on the knife. I tried to control my breathing but couldn't. Turns out that all that woo-woo TikTok relaxation breathing stuff was all just bullshit. My heart was thumping like an angry jazz drummer's long-awaited solo. I felt sweat drip down my neck. Something flickered on the painting. It momentarily took my eyes off the basement door. Like last night, I initially registered nothing different, but then I noticed, through the window of the living room, it looked like someone had turned on a light or lit a fire. Splotches of yellow and orange paint filled the window frame. The jingling of the basement door handle snapped me out of my trance. My palms were sweaty. My legs swayed like bamboo in a strong breeze. I gathered all my remaining strength and I yelled out, "Hey, stay away from me!" I wanted to say more, but overwhelming fear shut me up. The jiggling stopped. Relief. My hectoring had worked for about 2 seconds. The basement door cracked open, and there was a ghostly, pale face staring back at me. That was when my brain firmly decided whether I was a flight or fight kind of girl. I was a flight. Yeah, screw this. I dropped the knife, which clattered on the tile like that drummer hitting the hi-hat, and I sprinted toward my front door. I yelled gibberish the entire time, tears streaming down my face, and I blasted out of the door. My fingers hit send on the call, and seconds later, an annoyingly even-keeled 911 operator connected me with the police. Parker returned home before the police arrived. He found me sitting inside my locked car. Before he could crack a joke, he caught sight of my face. I had been crying and I could feel how puffy my eyes were. Consternation crossed his face. I rolled the window down. "Get in the car." He did, and I explained everything to him. He was astonished. He was confused. He grabbed my hand and held it steady as I went over everything, pausing occasionally to sob like a child with a skinned knee. When I was done, he asked why I didn't leave right away. "Who do you think you are, Rambo?" I laughed. I needed that. For a few seconds I was, and then I wasn't. I wasn't even Gizmo pretending to be Rambo. He gave my arm a loving squeeze. "Hey, if it'll help you calm down, we can watch some pro wiffle ball tonight. I hear the rhinos are playing the turkeys." "The storks," I said. "But they are actually playing the habaneros tonight. And Gil Faust is looking to debut his chili ball pitch." He leaned in and kissed my forehead. "But you're not a fan." "I'm not." A knock on the window caused me to scream. The cops had arrived. If they were curious why we were sitting in our car, they kept it to themselves. I relayed what happened and they said that they would go into the basement and check it out. 15 minutes later, they came walking out. "Yeah, we didn't see anyone down there," the cop said. But to be fair to you, your basement gave me the heebie-jeebies." "Great," I said. "I know it's not what you wanted to hear, but it's the truth. On the plus side, I haven't seen that love seat since I was a kid. You want it? It's better left to the past. You two have a nice day." We watched them leave. Parker turned to me. "You okay?" "No, and I won't be until I can go into the basement myself." "What? Why?" "I can't explain it, but something's drawing me there. It sounds crazy, I know, but I feel it in my bones." Parker saw the determined look in my eyes. This was going to happen. It had to happen. He sighed. "You want me to go first?" "Yes," I said. "Are you actually going to wait for me to go in or follow right behind me?" "Oh, we both know the answer to that." Resuming our reverse waltz, we went back into the house. Once in the kitchen, we stopped near the painting. Parker looked over and agreed that there were changes. We turned our attention to the closed basement door. Parker put his hand on the handle. "Hey, we don't have to go down here, Bonnie," he said. "The cops didn't find anyone." "Alive. If there's a ghost in this house, I need to know. If we know, we can remove it." "How?" "Oh, I'm still working on that part," I said. "But I need to know for certain." I won't feel safe otherwise. I'm inclined to just say yes and move on. Something altered the painting already. I mean, who the hell did that? One issue at a time, I said. He knew that he couldn't talk his way out of this. He knew that I needed this, and he loved me enough to see it through to the end. Even though he was petrified too. The skin on his arm had goosebumps as soon as we had walked into the kitchen. It felt like Braille to me now, and the only thing that it said was, "Oh, let's not do this." But that feeling in my brain, the one drawing me down there, wouldn't leave. It was stronger now that we were in the home. Something was loose in my house. I knew it in my heart. Whatever it was, I needed to keep it from roosting in my new home. I let the ghosts live in the past, leave my future alone. And Parker gripped the handle, sighed so loudly that it was heard 2 towns over, and he opened the door. The stairs led down into the dark of the basement. The floor around the landing was the only thing visible. In the abstract, it wasn't anything. Right now, though, horrifying. Parker found the light switch, illuminating the rest of the space. So far, so good. We took our time walking down the stairs, creaking along the wooden one step at a time. Maybe it would have the same effect on the ghost that hearing the creaking steps did on me. Perhaps the phantom was hiding, holding a ghost knife and deciding if it was going to play Ghost Rambo or just fearfully disappear into the walls. The house in the painting had a basement too, I whispered. When I was a kid, I hated going down there, any time of the day. It just didn't feel natural, you know. Are you trying to get me to stop doing this? Sorry, I'm rambling, I said. I kept right on rambling though. What bothered me wasn't so much about going down there. What scared me was the trip back up, turning your back on the dark. I used to walk backwards up the stairs. Yeah, we can try that in a few minutes, Parker whispered back. Any other ghost stories you want to share before we hit the landing? Sorry, I said. It just popped into my mind. I haven't thought about that fear in years. Since we moved away from there, actually. That's not comforting. We got to the bottom and I took a look around. Everything looked normal. No surprises. Just our old, ugly furniture and friendly Santa decorations smiling and giving us a frozen wave. I thought about turning and heading back up, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was supposed to be down here. I was almost positive that Parker would be furious if I went darting up the stairs without him. Leaving him alone in Spook Central might be grounds for divorce. When we headed over to the furniture, there was a layer of dust on everything. I smacked the pillow, sending it flying into the air. I coughed and sneezed, instantly regretting my actions. Parker's withering glare told me that he wasn't fond of my actions either. Sorry. I don't see anything out of the ordinary here, do you? No, it looks like it always does. Is the feeling gone? Can we go back upstairs now? Before I could answer, we heard the familiar chime from our security system, followed by the calm, reassuring voice informing us that our front door was open. What the hell? I said. Shh, Parker responded, his finger to his lips. He pointed up to the ceiling. We cocked our ears and concentrated. For about 20 seconds, there was nothing. Silence. It didn't last. The floorboards wheezed as someone took slow, deliberate steps above us. I could hear the footfalls as they moved from the front door to the hallway. Trembling, Parker pointed up at the ceiling. You could physically see the floor bow over ever so slightly from the person's weight. I didn't even think that that was possible. "What do we do?" I whispered. "I don't know. Maybe they'll leave." A second later, we were cloaked in total darkness. All the power in the house had gone out. The only light came from the sunlight streaming in from the open door at the top of the stairs. It wasn't much, but it was a beacon. Our lighthouse. Our way home. That is all I was able to say. Someone upstairs ran down the hall through the kitchen into the basement door. They slammed it shut, plunging us into instant midnight. I wanted to scream, to yell so loud that it would shake the heavens, but I couldn't. My body physically couldn't make that happen. It would give away our location. I clutched Parker's shirt so hard that I was afraid that I would rip it right off him. If it bothered him, he didn't say. "Oh, this sucks," Parker mumbled. Understatement of the century.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!
One of our Santa decorations started going off. I nearly peed myself at Santa's sudden arrival. I imagined it would have been the same response I would have had if I had seen him as a kid. Kris Kringle was soon joined by all of our Christmas decorations going off at once. Dozens of laughing Santas, lights flickering off and on, inflatables rising like zombified plastic bags. The noise was deafening but strangely festive. The strobing lights and the pitch black caused after images to dance in my rods and cones. I slammed them shut and silently prayed for all of this to end. Someone must have heard because as quickly as they had come to life, they stopped. We stood in the darkness, not breathing, not moving. Neither of us knew what to do. Nothing in my life had prepared me for this. I couldn't shake the idea that whatever was coming would be worse than what we had already experienced. There was a creaking again and a sudden rushing of blinding sunlight from the top of the stairs. Somebody had opened the door. Before we could get a glimpse, the door slammed shut and something sprinted down the now dark stairs. I pulled Parker back onto the old love seat. We sat on the edge and kept our heads on a swivel. Even though the basement was too dark to see our own hands, we weren't alone anymore. As my fingertips grazed the couch, I realized something. These were originally my parents. My parents had got them when I was living in the house from the painting. They were a physical connection between the past and now. Are these what caused my sudden desire to come to the basement? Was I being manipulated by this thing? Could I trust myself at all? That dread feeling that I had had since I brought the painting into our house intensified. I felt it in my bones, deeper even. My aura, my soul. I leaned into Parker's ear and whispered an apology. He didn't vocalize a response, but he squeezed my arm and I squeezed it back. My body shook and I couldn't get myself to stop. I wanted to run for the stairs, but that old fear came rushing back. I knew that if I ran up those stairs, it would follow behind me. As something whooshed by us, my hair flowed with it, trailing behind whatever it sprinted past. I nervously dug my fingers into the fabric. We heard the sound of some liquid splattering on the floor across from us. It was water, no, heavier than water. A sound that made my guts twist soon joined the drips and splashes. Someone started whistling a familiar tune. Pop Goes the Weasel, The Christmas decorations flickered on and off. In the brief flash of light, we could make out a figure standing across from us. Craig Moffat.
Pop.
He screamed as the light strobed.
Goes.
He screamed again, a foot closer this time. Another foot closer, almost directly in front of us now. The lights flickered again, and his face was right next to mine. A sinister smile as he slowly whispered,
Weasel.
I felt something wet and slimy rub against my cheek. Parker stood and surprisingly swung at Ghost Craig. It didn't find the ghoul, and as the darkness returned, his fist only found the arm of the couch. I heard his knuckles crack and him swear in pain. My ears were the only thing working at that moment, though. I sat frozen, tears streaming down my face. The lights in the house came back on and I screamed. On the wall across from us, where we had heard the water, the painting was hanging. Only it wasn't the old house. It was the current house. All the windows and doors were filled with flames, and there were two figures on the front lawn. Parker and I. We were both dead. Standing behind our oak tree watching it all was Craig Moffat. Parker, let's go! I didn't have to tell him twice. We broke for the stairs and took them 3 at a time until we made it to the top. I grabbed the handle and shoved my shoulder into the door, expecting it to hold firm. It didn't. Parker and I spilled onto our kitchen floor. I scrambled up and practically yanked Parker into the kitchen. I was about to slam the door when I saw Craig Moffat standing at the bottom of the stairs. We locked eyes and my mind flew back to my childhood, a memory stored deep in the folds of my brain. I was sitting on our porch reading a book and I heard that whistling. Craig Moffat, a Polaroid camera in his hands and portrait photos on his mind. I was afraid that he would stop and take a picture of me. I was right. Even now, I could hear the heavy clunk of the shutter and the whirring of the processing photo as it slid out. He shook it, and as the fog of war slowly dissipated on the photos, he smiled.
This way, I won't forget you.
I slammed the door shut and urged Parker to grab the car keys. He turned the corner to do so when I heard him sharply yelp in surprise, followed by the squeak of his sneakers on the hardwood and his butt hitting the ground. I ran into him expecting to see Craig, but I was stunned by the sight of a living man surrounded by 2 yellow hulks outside my front door. Once my brain had processed the information, it was clear that those men were wearing biohazard suits. It still didn't answer why men in biohazard suits were outside my door, but it cleared up that there were. The suitless man in the middle, though, had a more striking resemblance to the ghost that I had just seen in my basement, only younger, fuller, and fleshy.
Sorry to startle you both, the man said, raising his hands in peace. You had contacted us about a painting you found. I'm David Moffat. Craig was my father.
You've got to be shitting me. You were supposed to talk on the phone, I said.
Yes, but we were worried that things might have progressed too much by then. Tell me, has the door in the painting disappeared yet?
How did...
David turned to his men. A call for the extraction team. Turning back to us, he urgently asked, Where's the painting?
The basement, I said, but it looks different now.
What in the hell is going on? Parker asked.
Different? Would you say violently different? Like our dead bodies on the lawn and the place ablaze, violently different. He nervously turned to where the biohazard-suited men had gone.
The experienced extraction team.
Parker stood and held my hand. We looked at each other and back at David Moffat. We both cracked. Small smiles that turned into chuckles that turned into a laughing fit. I read somewhere that mental breaks can start like this. Whatever, I leaned in. David Moffat, the son of your childhood painter neighbor Craig Moffat, himself a ghost that nearly killed us, is standing in our veranda, Parker said, barely able to get the words out between screeching laughter. I mean, what the hell is this life? Seconds later, a team of armed men in hazmat suits carrying unknown machinery rushed in and headed for the basement. We heard one of them scream and then the sounds of mechanical engines warming up. David nodded toward the front door. We should go outside. We did. I mean, what the hell else were we going to do? Once we were outside, David pulled out a pack of cigarettes and offered us one. We both declined. David indulged and nodded back at the house. This is the experience team. What's going on? I asked. I'm gonna level with you. What I'm about to say is pretty weird. I like to say weird to people, it sets the right tone. Sir, on what is easily the weirdest day in not only my and my wife's life, but I would argue humanity's life, nothing that you can say will top what we've already been through, Parker said. I mean, I just discovered that my wife watches professional wiffle ball for God's sake. Not a fan, I mumbled. Dad was a strange man. Lots of demons. When he could keep them at bay, he did great work. But that was never for long. Around the time when you were a kid, he got deep into the occult. It was a faddish passing fancy at first, but soon he found a deeper meaning in it. It consumed him. Around this time, well, he conjured a demon. I think I'm having a stroke. He made a deal. We don't exactly know the details, but what we do know is that Dad agreed to start a company that would paint portraits of people's homes. The twist was that the homes he picked would become targets for the demon. Naturally, Parker said, because why not? He would take a photo of the home and give it to the demon. The demon would curse it and insert it into the canvases of my dad's paintings. These photos would be a connection between the subjects in the art and the demon itself. The pull got stronger when the artwork found its way back to the subjects. And then they would, well, he trailed off. Meet each other, I said. In a matter of speaking, yes. So many questions bounced around my brain. This all sounded so outlandish, and yet the memory of the photo came back to me. This way, I won't forget you, I said out loud. Confused, Parker looked at me. What? We don't know how many paintings Dad did during this time, but we've recovered 65 in locations from New York to California. The people selected seemed to be random, except for you. Why me? Well, my guess, you were neighbors and well, my dad really didn't like your dad. Oh, the feeling was mutual. Just then, the extraction team came rushing out. One was limping. The machines they had brought looked broken, but the lights were still on. One of them had the painting in a biocontainment bag. It was smoking. The experience team, David said, ashing out his smoke on the bottom of his shoe and pocketing the butt. Thank you for letting us help rid you of this menace. The work is exhausting, but my family has to atone for Craig's wicked actions. And David nodded and turned to leave. I reached out and grabbed his shoulder. Wait, that's it? We're free just like that. And just like that, he said, turning to leave. He stopped and spun on his heels. Unless you have something from the old house in your new house, then you kinda sorta leave a back door for the demon to return. So if you do, I suggest destroying it. He tipped his cap and laughed. Parker and I locked eyes. The love seat, we said at the same time. My back hurt just thinking about hauling it up those narrow stairs. Later that night, we torched the sofa in a makeshift fire pit in our backyard. We ate pizza and watched the flames consume the potentially demonic couch. I can't imagine that's a sentence that's been said a lot in history. As we did, relief filled my heart. The dread was gone. I looked over at Parker and smiled. I think we can put to bed the argument about who had the weirder childhood, Park. He laughed. Yeah, summers with my Amish family can't compete with demons. His phone buzzed and he looked down at the notification with concern. I felt my stomach twist. Oh, please tell me that it's good news. Yeah, it is. The Rhinos Habaneros game is about to start. What? I set a reminder for you. Do you want to watch? I touched my heart and felt pure happiness surge through me. Tears. Grabbing his free hand, I held it tight and I gave it a big squeeze. I have something to confess. I think I'm a legitimate fan of professional wiffle ball. I know, babe. I know. We sat together, letting the crackling of a burning demon couch and the crack of a wiffle ball bat fill the night air. I snuggled into Parker's shoulder. It was warm, inviting. Home and not one haunted by an angry ghost. How did one girl get so lucky? Back when I was in high school, we had to move on short notice. It was just me and my mom, and she was struggling to keep a job down. After getting tagged with a DWI, we ended up moving in with my aunt and the projects. It was the only way to make ends meet. It was by far my lowest point. I slept on the couch in the living room while my mom took the bedroom. My aunt spent most of her time at her boyfriend's place anyway, so she was rarely around. It was rough to say the least. Everything can be rough at that age, but changing schools and getting thrown down a couple rungs on the class ladder was a bad combo. I was a pretty normal kid. I played a lot of basketball, but I had no hopes of going pro. I had no idea what I was going to do. College was a pipe dream, so it was mostly about passing my classes and hoping for a miracle. Or a job. A job works too. The area was pretty bad. One corner shop with welded windows and half a dozen handwritten signs stapled to the front door. No carts or baskets. A wall of pictures by the entrance showing who's barred from entry. One of them had a little blue cross sign painted on with a faded RIP beneath. There was this sandwich place that must have been there since the 70s. The place was tiny with a lowercase t. I've seen refrigerator boxes that are bigger. Basically a door where you can hear somebody talking on the phone, with a sign that says, "Yeah, we're open." Only 2 items on the menu. Meat or no meat. I got nothing bad to say about that place though. Mr. Barker's sandwiches are, to this day, the best damn street food that I've ever had. I've tried recreating his pickled garlic salsa for years, but I can't get the zest right. And then there was the high school. There were metal detectors and one of our teachers openly smoked in the classroom. The less that I say about that place, the better. All that aside, it wasn't like you couldn't live there. I mean, yeah, it wasn't pretty. You can sort of feel the eyes on your neck when you walk down the wrong street. But once you learn what street you're not supposed to walk down, you're gonna be okay. It's not the kind of place where somebody gets shot every day. I mean, it happens, but it's not as random and sudden as people from the city think. You know who's gonna be trouble by the look of them. There had been a couple of ideas on how to revitalize the area. There was an office at the far end that they tried to make into a sort of mini hotel. The kind of cheap place that second-grade tourists stay at when they want the authentic experience. The place lasted for a couple of years but closed by the time that we moved in down the street. There were still signs up when we got there, so it wouldn't surprise me if some folks got tricked into thinking that it was still open. I wouldn't say that I had any friends really, not at first. I had some guys that I knew and that I knew wouldn't mess with me without a good reason. And there was Kieran, for example. Pretty stand-up guy, and we made a good team on the court. There was Holland, tallest guy in the class. Nice but a bit slow. And his hand-eye coordination was shot to shit. The guy could barely spell his name, but without him we couldn't play 3-on-3. There were a couple of others too, but most of them just blended into the background. When I had lived there for about 3 months, there was a new push for revitalization. They put up new streetlights. Or at least, that's what we thought. The first time that I saw them was on a Thursday night. People were out and about, somebody was playing music and I could hear somebody yelling and whooping, but I couldn't make out which apartment that it came from. I had homework to do and I wasn't feeling very social. My mom and aunt were out, leaving me to watch TV and procrastinating over equations. I remember looking out the living room window, only to see a street light. At first, I didn't think about it, until I realized that I had never seen one there before. That had been a problem for my mom when we first got here. She didn't feel safe without them. At some point, the city must have fixed them. It was right there, as bright as ever. I watched a guy come wandering down the street and stopping underneath that light, looking up at it. He raised his hand to shield his eyes. He seemed to be a bit out of it, so maybe he just didn't register what the hell he was looking at. And then the streetlight went out. Just minutes after first spotting it. I blinked, adjusting my eyes. There was no man there anymore. He was gone. Over the next few days, I would see the occasional streetlight here and there. Rarely the same one and rarely for a long time. It's as if they just came on momentarily and only a few at a time. It felt appropriate in a way. Of course, the city would mess up trying something new. No good deed goes unpunished. And people around school were talking about it too. It was a known fact that the only streetlights that actually worked were the ones near the school, so to see any others was noteworthy. Not just because it was something new, but because it seemed inconsistent. They weren't the only thing that happened around the neighborhood lately. For example, there was a full wall where they had cleaned up the graffiti. They had put in new windows in a couple of buildings. They had moved one of the broken down cars in the lot behind the gym. Little things, but enough to show that something was going on. And Kieran didn't like it. "Oh, it's bad news," he said, shaking his head. "I don't know how, but it's all bad news. It's gotta be." Later that week, I was out with the guys. They were dropping by a house party and they wanted me to come along to meet some new people. It was mostly Holland pulling the strings on that one. He was invited pretty much everywhere. And we spent almost a full hour getting there, just because he got stopped by so many people that he knew on the way. It was 10 minutes away at a light jog. It was a pretty chill party. I ended up with a lukewarm beer sitting in a cheap white plastic deck chair texting. Holland was inside trying to figure out just how many people he knew there. Kieran sat in the deck chair next to me, but he had already finished his beer. We were talking about school when a streetlight came on, just a bit down the road. There was something else in the air, something like static. My phone started charging and I went from 2 bars of coverage to 5. I could feel the screen going hot. "You seeing this?" I asked, showing him my phone. "I told you," he said. "Something's wrong. Some mind cancer BS." Holland came rumbling out of the house with what looked like a quarter bottle of whiskey. And 2 guys were right behind him, one of them insisting that he could take him in a fight. A lot of people wanted to fight Holland just because he was the biggest. Holland waved them off and walked up to us. Kieran pointed down the street to the light. Holland looked for a while and then took a step back. "Oh shit, they got it working." "I don't know," Kieran huffed. "I don't like it." "Oh, it's gotta be brand new." Before I could say anything, he walked off to check it out. And Kieran and I got out of our chairs and followed him. A little group from the party tagged along. The closer that we got, the warmer that my phone went, like we were walking up to a power source. I stopped a couple of steps away while Holland stepped right into the sharp cone of light. It felt less like a street light and more like a spotlight. Center stage. He looked straight up like he was staring at the sun. "I don't get it," he said. "It ain't new. There are stickers and shit." "Oh, they probably just fixed the bulb," Kieran added. "Nah, there was nothing here." "You mean they put in a busted and tagged light from some other shithole?" "Come on, man." "I don't know what to tell you," Kieran shrugged. Holland tapped the streetlight a couple of times, shaking his head. The light went out, and we went from burning bright to murky street corner in the blink of an instant. And when we looked a little closer, Holland was gone. At first, we were just confused. Not just me and Kieran, but a whole bunch of people. We looked around like he had took off running. I called him, but I couldn't connect the call. Kieran snapped him, but got nothing. Here one moment and gone the next. While the others went looking for him and calling out to him, I took a closer look at the streetlight. I noticed something. There was no bulb, and the glass was broken. A moment ago it had been whole, but we hadn't heard any glass break and there were no shards on the pavement. And there were more stickers on the sides. And different stickers. It's like I was looking at a completely different streetlight. We walked around, calling out to Holland. Kieran elbowed me, showing me his phone. "We walk this way, I get more bars," he said. "I bet there's another light. You think that he went there?" And Kieran didn't answer. He just shook his head and looked down. We walked around for a couple of hours trying to find Holland. He wasn't answering anything and we couldn't get a hold of him. Some folks ended up calling his uncle who he lived with, but he wasn't home either. Holland was gone. Out like a light. And just like Kieran had predicted, we found another streetlight by the corner shop. It was only on for a couple of seconds, but in that time, I saw a stray cat walk through. It didn't come out on the other side. As the streetlight went out, I made the same observation as before. It looked completely different when it was on. There were 2 different lights, one functioning and one broken. Well, people started taking this seriously. A couple started to track the lights down and film them, hoping to see something weird. Others tried to dare one another to mess with them. I wasn't there for it myself, but apparently an older kid went missing the same way that night. They stepped into the light and they disappeared. This was no joke.
People were calling not just one another, but parents, friends, family, and even the police. There were a couple of videos that started to circulate the group chats. Videos of a guy standing in the streetlight, making a peace sign, only to disappear when the lights went out. "I'm out," was the last thing that you hear him say. They're laughing in the video, until they ain't. That first night it just felt weird, but the next day it was real. Holland was missing. People were out looking, calling one another, asking where he had last been seen. I got 4 calls from people asking what had happened and where he went, and I had to tell them all the same thing. One moment he was there and then he wasn't. It didn't make any sense, and it's not the kind of thing that you can tell a worried guardian in a neighborhood where people have been known to get in trouble over nothing. And Kieran went over to Holland's place. I wasn't along for it, but apparently he had had a long talk with his uncle. All of a sudden, the streetlights weren't a fun quirk. There was something seriously wrong with them. While we were at school, somebody called city management to ask what the hell was going on. There were no answers, and nobody was willing to come down and talk to us. There were no squad cars going around, nobody knocking on doors asking questions. There definitely was no project to get the lights back on. Instead, while most of us went to school, some guys around the neighborhood brought hammers and saws and they took down the last remaining lights. The broken ones, that is. To an outsider, it must have looked like vandalism. For those of us who knew, it was a rare act of solidarity. Hell, even Mr. Barker was out on the street, leaving the sandwich place vacant for the first time in forever. There was this feeling like, yeah, this neighborhood was shit, but it was ours, you know. Even I, who just got there, was still a part of it. We were in it together, and if nobody was gonna have our backs, then we would do it ourselves. But that didn't stop something strange from happening. Most nights, you could see the lights go on. Not all at once, a few and far between if anything, but they were there. Every now and then somebody would disappear. It could take hours before we noticed, but by the time we did, it was already too late. In that first week, we lost something like 5 people. It got bad enough that people outside of the neighborhood had started to notice. We saw new cars passing through, looking around. A couple of folks showed up at our school just to tell us that we were all full of it. They saw the broken streetlights and thought that we were making it all up just to get some attention. They didn't understand. But the consequences were real as real can be. Holland was gone from class and nobody knew what to make of it. I mean, sure, people skip school all the time, but Holland wasn't like that. He may have been slow, but he wasn't negligent. He gave it an honest shot and he was there every day, come hell or high water. And Kieran and I had a couple of teachers come up to us after class asking us if we knew anything. I mean, what could we say? He gone with the light. It was the best way that Kieran could describe it. Like we keep telling you. Some people started walking in the middle of the street, hoping to stay out of the lights if they suddenly came on. Sure, people had always had a tentative relationship with jaywalking, but this was a whole new level. You could see an old woman with 2 grocery bags walk down the middle of Main Street, and nobody looked twice. It was amazing how fast people adapted, and how fast something turned from a rumor to a threat. But I guess if you're used to threats, another one isn't that surprising, no matter the shape or the form. I went out with a couple of people every now and then just to see what was going on. We could use our phones to kind of spot where the next streetlight would pop up. You would get a small charge and better coverage just moments before it came on, so you just had to pay attention. We usually saw them from down the street. Even if the light itself had been cut down and removed, a working one would stand there like nothing had happened, shining down. Some people would run from them, others would stop to take pictures. And once I saw a girl being held back by two of her friends, screaming at the light to give him back. We would do our part. Whenever a light came on, we would throw things at it. Rocks, bricks, whatever. We would break a couple. Maybe it helped, maybe it didn't, I don't know. But it felt good at doing something. Anything. One evening when we were out looking, a signal came on, stronger than before. We were right by the corner store where that cat had gone missing. Kieran pulled me back as a streetlight a couple of feet ahead of us lit up. I could hear the crackling from it, and I saw a TV in a nearby house flicker through a living room window. The emergency lights on a parked car started blinking. And there was somebody standing there. Holland. His skin was almost gray, and his lips were cracked like dry paper. His eyes were sunken and pale and full of dust. He was wearing nothing but shorts and a single sneaker. There was dry blood coming down his left arm. I could tell that he had trouble breathing, like he had been running or choking. Kieran was about to run up, but I grabbed him by the arm. Something felt off. The other guys filmed it. "Holland!" Kieran called out. "Holland, what the hell?" Holland shook his head, biting down on his lip. He covered the wound on his arm as he spoke, his voice barely a wheeze. "Tell Uncle I didn't leave him. It's messed up. Saw poison, but I didn't leave. I didn't go." "Just walk, get over here," I called out. "Come on, let's go." "Saw poison, dying. It's all poison." Alan took a step forward. As his body crossed that sharp cone, something happened. Parts of his body dissolved into a dithery cross-section. Slices disintegrated the moment that they left the light, swallowed by the darkness. I remember the moment that his face went from weeping to a death's head grin. His voice collapsed into a rattled falsetto, like somebody had poked a hole in his lungs halfway through a final wailing. And then the light went out. Kieran freaked out. The others were too, sharing the video with people from around the block. I just stood there trying not to piss myself. It took me 10 minutes to realize that Holland's shoes and shorts were still on the pavement. This had been real. The proof was right there. Some people thought the video was fake, even though there were 3 different angles. Others thought it was some kind of sick joke or a performance piece thing. Holland's uncle got pissed off beyond belief. He showed up at one guy's apartment screaming his lungs off, demanding that the video be taken down. Meanwhile, Kieran and I were making plans of our own. I figured if something like clothes can come back from whatever that is, then maybe we can film it. That was our working theory, at least. Kieran got a hold of a spare phone from his sister, and we decided why not, let's give it a shot. We got a selfie stick and we chased down a streetlight, hoping to time it just right. It took us a couple of tries.
But a few days later, we had nailed it. Just beneath the streetlight outside of Mr. Barker's sandwich place, we managed to sneak in a recording phone. We put it on the sidewalk facing upward, making sure not to have anything but the phone and the selfie stick go inside the light. As it turned off, I grabbed the selfie stick and I pulled the phone in. The screen was fried, but we had managed to get the files off of it. The video footage was strange. We had only filmed for about 30 seconds or so, but the recording was well over 3 minutes. In it, you could see my face as I turned the video on. Then there's this bright light as the camera looks straight up. There's a static crackling as you can hear what sounds like a spinning fan going higher and higher, and you can hear Kieran and I talking in the background. Then, about 20 seconds in, the screen goes white. There's this crackling noise that rises and falls like an electric pulse. The white light would flicker with shades of blue and green, only to grow stronger and fade in waves. That's all there was. Kieran and I sat on a bench and we turned up the volume, using one earbud each. We maxed out the volume, trying to discern some kind of detail. Kieran gave up on the 4th try. "What if we speed it up?" he asked. "Or slow it down or whatever, just something else." "Why not play it backwards?" I scoffed. "Could be some Pink Floyd shit." "What? Screw it." We tried a couple of things. Slowing it down, speeding it up, a low pass filter, a high pass filter. It wasn't until we had tried a noise reduction filter that we realized what we were listening to. It wasn't a wave or a pulse. It was a noise of some kind. It sounded like somebody talking. "An I," Kieran mumbled. "Sounds like they're saying an I." "They?" I asked. "Who's they?" "Well, I don't know, someone," Kieran shrugged. "Someone talking." I didn't like it, but he was right. It did sound like a voice, and it did sound like it was saying something. I just didn't like what I was hearing. A couple of folks were escalating things. There was this neighborhood watch kind of deal with some guys walking the streets with guns, taking shots at streetlights that appeared. Some probably just did it for the fun, but some of them were really serious about it. Holland's uncle was one of them. And Kieran and I didn't have the heart to hand him back the shoe and the shorts. The man looked like he was about to tear somebody's head off whenever we saw him. We tried to do a couple more recordings. There weren't as many streetlights around, but we caught a couple of them. It was scary though. Kieran was a bit rough around the edges. He almost stepped into the light once. I had to hold him back. I think if you see something enough times, you start to think it's no big deal even when it can kill you. It was like he was somehow exempt from the anger. We got 2 more videos and they were pretty similar. The sounds that we got were a bit different, and the length of the recording had changed, but we didn't get a clearer image. We tried putting the phone on its side, but it was difficult getting it to work without a working screen. We kinda had to guess where the record button was. After the 3rd recording, the battery exploded. It was a late Friday when I was out with Kieran, trying to figure out what to do next. We were standing outside of the corner shop, but they had closed early. It was getting dark, but we were keeping an eye on our phones. No signs of lights. We stood on the same corner where we had last seen Holland. A couple of folks had put flowers on the sidewalk, mostly roses and a couple of sunflowers. The petals were already sprinkled across the street. "I think we can try again," Kieran asked. "We can use my phone." "Oh, what's the point?" I asked, kicking some flowers around. "It's just light and noise. It doesn't mean anything." "So we just go home and then what?" "Yeah, we could play ball," I shrugged. "I don't know. Yeah, we're one man short for 3-on-3. A rose petal got stuck to my sneaker. I kicked it off with a sigh. "Fine, we'll use your phone." We walked around for a little over an hour. We heard a gunshot and saw one of the lights go out further down the street. I don't even think that it was a part of our neighborhood. It was way too far off. I bet a couple of innocent lights got busted in the process. Kieran and I walked round and round the block a couple of times, trying to find something on our phones. Not a peep. Maybe the watch got them all. I mean, there had to be an end to the lights at some point. We ended up right where we started, outside of the corner shop. Kieran was pissed as all hell, asking them to check their phones to see if anybody was picking up something. And meanwhile, I was checking my socials. People were talking about the lights like it was some kind of urban legend. Even people who lived in the neighborhood were talking about it like it was an excuse. It was this attitude of, "Oh, we know what's really going on." It was like Holland was some kind of gangster who had it coming. It didn't matter how many people came to his defense in the comments. The memes and crappy jokes were all that remained in the top comments. After 10 minutes or so, Kieran put his phone down and frowned, and then he looked up. "Hey," he said, "is your phone okay?" "Yeah," I nodded, 98%. "We've been out for hours, man. It shouldn't still be at 98. My hand felt warm as I looked down. I got 5 bars of coverage. The sweat trickled down my neck as my hair stood up from the static air. I realized that I was leaning back on something that hadn't been there a moment before. Something metallic and tall. The light came on. My throat immediately closed off, like my body was protecting me from something. I couldn't even exhale. It was just this thick phlegm sinking into my lungs. The light was blinding me, turning the entire world a burning white. I could see an outline of the street even then. I could see a shadow of what looked like Kieran just a couple of feet ahead, but the world was too bright to make out the details. He looked like someone had spilled an ink blot in his likeness. It was the same neighborhood. The corner shop, the sandwich place, but it all looked different. Cleaner. Different names on the signs. More screens in the windows. A bigger sun in the sky. Kieran was moving around, but slowly. He was reaching for me, screaming something. It came through as this static, where only a couple of syllables made sense. He was panicking, but it was like seeing it in slow motion. I turned my head, looking for something, anything. I didn't even know what. Just whatever could save me at that moment. My skin felt like it had been dipped in boiling water, turning from a searing heat into an icy cold. I could feel the moisture in my eyes and mouth evaporate, and the skin around my gums tighten as my teeth strained against the sudden pressure. There were people there, dead in the streets. Most of them made it a couple of steps from the lights. Others were still sitting underneath them, as if waiting for them to come back on. One dead man looked more like a burned log than a person, leaving a seared imprint on the concrete. It had only been a couple of seconds, but my head was swimming. I could see heat swaying on the horizon, and the sky beyond it as a distant mirage. It was midday and it was killing me. There were no clouds and no sky. It was just a pale white and a black hole, like I was staring up into an all-encompassing eye. Blood vessels the size of distant galaxies, and impossible attention turned our way. I remembered trying to say a word, but I could only click my tongue. An eye, an eye, an eye. I took a step and I fell forward. I had slipped on something. Even now, I could see the flowers on the street, the rose petals and the sunflowers. They had turned a strange blue and curled in on themselves, like dying bugs underneath a magnifying glass. Kicking out with my leg, I realized why I had slipped. I had stepped on something. Holland's second shoe. I kicked it. It bounced a couple of feet and lost its color. Maybe I was going blind. My eyes were swelling shut, but even with my eyes closed, the light burned through my mind. It was this otherworldly feeling, like I was falling, but not from the world disappearing beneath me. It felt more like I was growing smaller and smaller at such a rate that the air around me just couldn't keep up. Something shifted and I heard a thump, like rubber hitting glass. Kieran had thrown the shoe at the streetlight and had made it flicker, if only for a second. He yelled something, but I only heard the first word. Hold. I just lay there trying to force air in and out of my lungs, but I couldn't. It all felt like poison. This place, it was wrong. It was made for something or someone else at another time and place. People weren't meant to walk those streets or sit beneath its lights. It must have been some kind of mistake. A huge, terrible mistake. And all the while, something was watching me break into pieces. An eye. I remember the last sensation of touch leaving my fingers as the concrete faded away. My mind was shutting down, racing 100 ways per second. Maybe that's what it feels like when you're dying. I don't know. Maybe that's what I was doing. It wasn't really panic or even euphoria. It was more like anything and everything. The rubber taste of a pacifier, the smell of batteries, the feeling of a freshly made bed under my fingers. Like my mind was grasping at whatever straws it could find, hoping to keep me kicking for just a little bit longer. And then it slowed and slowed and slowed. Now I've heard about this next part from some guys in school. No one knew Holland's uncle used to be in the Navy. No one knew that he could hit a streetlight from all the way down the street one-handed with a handgun. He barely had to aim. He just pointed, clicked, boom, done. It was the only light that he shot, and he hit it right on the mark first try. And thank God that he did. The moment that the streetlight popped, I could feel a flush of cool air. It felt like that I had come up to the surface after a long dive. The moment that my lungs opened, I exhaled this black powder straight from the bottom of my lungs. Kieran was already dragging me into the street, calling for help. I couldn't see anything. Everything burned like I had pressed my whole body against a hot stovetop and only just now released the pressure. Some people were running our way, calling out to us. I heard someone mention my name. It hurt when Kieran shook my shoulder, but it was nice to feel something real. When I finally got enough soot out to gasp for breath, I could feel the world returning to me. My thoughts mellowed, and the pinprick in my dry eyes widened. They had my mom and aunt come pick me up. They had to drive me into the city. And by the time that I got to the emergency room, I was so tired that I couldn't remember my name. I just sat there giggling like a goofball, falling in and out of consciousness. They probably thought that I was on something. When I woke up the next day, I was on the couch in my aunt's living room. Mom was stroking my hair. The TV was running, but they had lowered the volume. There was orange juice on the table, and one of Mr. Barker's sandwiches, the meat kind. I remember everything hurting, my eyes especially. I could barely keep my hand steady, but man, was I happy. I moved out of that neighborhood a couple of years ago when I got a job in the inner city. Some folks may have heard the rumors of those strange lights, but most thought that it was just a hoax. I think the total number of missing people was somewhere around 9, but at least one of them turned out to be someone who skipped town. Didn't really help the credibility of the real victims. If you talk to the right people and mention the right names, I'm sure that they'll tell you all about it. Not because it's the most interesting thing in the world or the strangest thing that they've seen. No, they'll tell you because it was something that we managed to deal with as a community. After a couple of weeks, there were no more streetlights. We got them all and they never came back on. Alan's uncle had got the last one, and thank God that he did. I haven't been there for some time now, but from what I hear, things are pretty much the same. Mr. Barker's probably closing in on 80 by now, but he still works that sandwich stand. Some folks still leave flowers by the corner shop, and if you ask the right person what happened there, they'll tell it like it is. Holland, he gone. He gone with the light. I only noticed the notification because I had taken my phone off vibrate. I'm someone who detests the constant dinging and chiming of a modern smartphone. The only reason that I even bought one is because my job required me to upgrade my flip phone, and so to try and keep as much of the digital noise out of my daily life, I always have it set to vibrate at most, and usually silent. But I was expecting a call from my doctor's office to schedule my yearly physical, so to make sure that I wouldn't miss it, I had set my notification volume to full blast while I cleaned up around the apartment. When the annoying ding-ding smashed through the relaxed atmosphere provided by the playful vocals of Brigitte Bardot coming from the record player, despite being only halfway done, I walked over and picked up the phone from the counter. If nothing else, it would be a brief distraction from the monotony. When I saw that it was a Facebook notification from one of my old friends that I hadn't spoken to in a while, I smiled slightly. Well, what do you know? I tapped it, opening the app and fully expecting to see a comment on my wall about how we needed to catch up soon. But instead, I came across the last thing that I expected to see. Rest in peace, man. Gone way too soon. I only had a moment to feel the pure, unfiltered confusion at the two sentences before my phone began ringing, making me jump slightly. After a second's hesitation, I answered it, and I was greeted by the cheerful and friendly voice of my doctor's assistant. Normalcy returned, and shifting into professional mode, I quickly set a date and time for the week after next to see him before hanging up. Pulling the phone away from my ear, I stared at the screen in the strange pose. And then the realization hit me and I began to laugh. Brett, you utter idiot. My friend was always one to play off-color and dumb jokes on me. Pulling a stunt like this would be right up his alley. It would confuse the hell out of everyone else, but he would know that I would eventually get it and laugh about it together. Chuckling, I opened Messenger and quickly typed out a direct reply. A very funny, weirdo. That's a new one, I'll give you that. Congratulations on confusing the heck out of me with that post. You're gonna either completely baffle everyone else or make me have to reassure everybody on my friends list by the end of the day. I'm getting you back for this. Satisfied and imagining him laughing his butt off when he saw my message, I returned my phone to silent and went about finishing up my cleaning. Then, wanting some fresh air and needing to pick up a few things from the store and pharmacy, I locked my door, got into my aging Crown Vic, and I took off. The unusually warm spring weather was nice enough that I was able to roll down my windows, and I waved at one of my neighbors mowing his lawn, receiving a smile and a wave in return. Merging with traffic, I glanced slightly nervously down at the dash, praying that I wouldn't see any warning lights. I really need to get into the mechanic soon as I have the money anyways. The 30-year-old sedan was on the ragged edge of drivability, to the point that I didn't dare drive it out of town. I was terrified the moment that I got off the bridge and a mile or two down the isolated coastal highway that connects home to the outside world, I would end up stranded. And making less than $12,000 a year means money needs to go more to rent, lights and food than car repairs. But she had served me well so far. Better than the modern trucks and cars that my neighbors were dumb enough to buy every few years. Even still, I was at least thankful that it was the only thing that seemed to change here. The rest of the isolated Oregon town was perpetually frozen in time. The houses all remained the same stores lined the streets, and the same faces that I had grown used to seeing were always where I had hoped they would be. Picking up my medication and a frozen pizza for dinner, I window shopped for a little while, seeing the happy faces of teenagers, adults, and elderly couples alike, enjoying the 64-degree weather. The positivity was infectious, and I couldn't help but stay around them for a bit, eventually leaving with a smile on my face that remained as I drove back home and shoved the pizza into the oven. It wasn't until close to 8 after I had watched a movie that Brett's prank post had resurfaced in my mind. Chuckling again, I picked up my phone from the coffee table and I flicked on the screen. Just as I thought, there were message notifications from him waiting for me. I grinned, tapping them as I prepared to read an excessive amount of LOLs and gloating about how he had got me for a minute. But instead, I found myself reading a deluge of short, increasingly hostile messages. Who the hell is this? I said, who the hell is this? Is this one of Dalton's family? Answer me. All the good vibes from the day deflated like a child's abandoned party balloon as I continued to scroll down. Oh, you son of a...
You hacked my friend's account. What's wrong with you? Get a life and don't ever message me again." "What in the world?" I whispered, my eyebrows furrowing in confusion. What is up with him? This wasn't like him at all. Something had to be up. Quickly, I typed out a message to him, seeing the green online bubble next to his name. "Dude, what the hell? Nobody's hacked my account. Take a chill pill. Is everything alright?" I didn't even have time to close out of the app before I saw that it had been read. The 3 bubbles appeared, showing he was typing a reply. A moment later it appeared and I felt my confusion spike to new levels. "Oh, get lost, you loser. Don't try and pretend that you're him." Quickly I replied, "Dude, I promise it's me. Are you at home? I'll video call you to prove it." The reply was almost instantaneous. "I said get lost." The all caps message made me recoil as if I had been physically slapped. And all the time that I had known Brett, he had never acted like this towards me. Now he was treating me like I was either a complete stranger or the punchline to the cruelest joke that he had ever played. Is he drunk? Deciding that I would try and get one of our other friends to check on him to make sure that he was okay, I found my chat with Eva, noting with a small pang of guilt that it had been months since I had messaged her last. I know I'm not the fondest of social media, but I really need to keep up contact with my friends outside of town. That's how you drift apart. Deciding that I wanted to do something other than type, I quickly left her a voice message. "Eva, hey, look, I'm really sorry that I haven't hit you up in, 5 months now. You know me, I get busy out in the real world, and I forget to even check my messages on here. I promise that we'll catch up soon, but right now I need a favor. Brett's acting seriously weird, and I don't know what's up with him. Could you maybe message him, or if you get some similar weirdness, actually go to his place and check on him? I don't know if Bella left him and he decided to get drunk or something, but this just isn't like him. I'll get into the details later. Thanks, and again, we'll talk soon. I love ya." Releasing the button and making sure that it sent, I looked again at the screaming profanity that almost seemed to leap off the screen. Involuntarily, I shuddered at it and quickly exited the app, wanting to let the real, sane world reassert itself. Sighing, I turned and saw the orange glow of the sun framed in my kitchen window. Standing up and walking to it, I craned my neck and looked towards the estuary and Pacific beyond. The sky almost seemed the color of my favorite cocktail, with its orange and reddish hues, and I found myself smiling slightly at it. That's beautiful. I should honestly get a picture of that. I'm pulling on a flannel shirt over my bare chest. I stepped outside onto the balcony facing the water and I raised my phone. I snapped one, and then seeing it was quickly beginning to slip away, I impulsively switched it to selfie mode, and I positioned myself in front of it. I gave it my usual half smile before watching the sun disappear on the horizon. Feeling the call of the Sandman to my bed, I took a moment to open Facebook back up, uploading both pictures and updating my profile picture with the selfie. At least now it isn't showing that horrible haircut that I had in 2019. Walking back inside, I tossed the phone onto the couch and walked into the bedroom, changing into a pair of pajama bottoms and climbing into bed. I wound up and set the alarm on my clock. Then for a few minutes, I stared up at the ceiling,
watching the shape of the bare tree branches outside shift around in the wind. As they shifted in one direction, the branches seemed to transform into skeletal hands, reaching out across the ceiling. Normally it wouldn't have bothered me, but after the weird interaction with Brett, which despite my slightly better mood was still battering around in my head like a pinball, I couldn't help but shiver at them. I turned away on my side, facing the wall and slowly allowing my eyes to close and feeling the waking world rapidly fall away from me. The next morning, I quickly dressed and got ready to head off to my shift at the lumberyard. I grabbed my phone on my way out the door, but I didn't even bother to look at it. I would deal with everything on my lunch break. I waved to Mr. Dieter as I passed by the hardware store, smiling at the elderly man stopped wheeling the open sign out onto the sidewalk to beam and return the gesture. And the first few hours of my shift passed by uneventfully. Aside from a moment of pure panic, when my boss had selected one of us to drive to the next town to pick up the order sheet for this week's delivery, I had often been deferred due to the condition of my car. But Travis had warned me lately that he couldn't do so much longer, as it wasn't fair to the others. Eventually I would have to do it. Internally, and admittedly slightly bitter, I snorted as he turned his back to me. How about you do it for a change like you're actually supposed to, and grab a frickin' salad next time before you go Gandolfini on us all. Thankfully this time around I went to Carl, and so I was able to return to my job of operating the forklift, moving wood around the yard for the next truck, before the 2 p.m. whistle signaled our lunch break. Retrieving the sandwich and the soda from my car that I had bought at Subway that morning, I settled in one of the empty break rooms and I began to eat. As I did, the thought of yesterday entered my mind, and I decided that while I had some time and privacy, I would check to see if either Eva had replied to me or Brett had come to his senses. Taking a sip of Coke, I fished it out of my pocket and I turned on the screen. To my immense relief, I saw that I had a message waiting from Eva and I tapped on it, opening up the chat. I saw that she had done the same thing that I had and sent me a voice note, one about a minute or so long. I quickly popped a few chips into my mouth, chewing as I imagined what she would tell me. I decided to get it over with and I tapped for it to begin playing.
You disgusting lowlife.
My head snapped up as Eva's voice, one that I had never heard speak to anyone with harsher than a soft reproach, hissed with barely contained venom through the speaker.
You utter piece of crap. How dare you use the voice of somebody that I love this way? How dare you use that disgusting deepfake stuff to mimic it, to post a photo of him? Do you have any idea what kind of fresh wounds you're tearing open? Do you know what it's doing to his friends? To me?
My eyes widened as a mixture of shock and utter disbelief flooded my system. Brett was one thing. While it was screwed up, I could explain him as either having gone too far with a bad joke, or taking pain out on somebody due to a breakup. But Eva, she was the last person that I would have ever expected this from. And more to the point, the venom in her voice, it wasn't fabricated. It was genuine. Every word she hissed out felt like a knife to my heart. As I recalled growing up back in New Hampshire together, going to school together and only ever seeing her smile at me. Duncan, another one of our friends, had whispered to me one night that she secretly had a crush on me, that I could tell over the years and never went away. But I didn't want to ruin our friendship, and so I never made a move. The woman that I was hearing swear and berate me seemed like a different woman entirely. She continued,
Don't you ever message me again. Don't you try voice calling me or nothing. Brett warned me about you when I messaged him earlier. We're gonna make sure you can't do this to any of his friends again.
Her voice seemed to gather even more venom in it as her tone raised to almost a shout.
Normally, I wouldn't say something as messed up as I'm about to, but in this case, I'll make an exception for a piece of crap like you. Go drink Drano, you worthless excuse for a human. Get lost and stop treating the memory of a dead friend like it's your personal toy.
The voice note ended, leaving me with only the sound of the ventilation system for company. My lunch lay forgotten on the table. All I could do was stare straight ahead at the wall, at the small rectangular window near the ceiling as Eva's final sentence kept replaying in my mind. Stop treating the memory of a dead friend like it's your personal toy. Dead friend? A chill ran up my spine as the only words I could think came to me, barely coming out in a whisper. What is going on? I barely managed to get through the rest of my shift without internally losing it. The two words kept burning a hole into the back of my consciousness, no matter how hard I tried to push them away. At one point, I paused and looked down at my arm, and unable to keep the feeling of insects from crawling under my skin at bay, I reached out and I pinched the skin. After a moment, I felt pain, letting go to see 2 red marks from my fingernails. I shook my head. I don't know what the hell is happening, but I know that I'm not dead. Dead people can't feel pain. Even still, fueled by all the horror movies that I had grown up watching, the small but potent bit of doubt, and as much as I wanted to ignore it, dread, it kept eating away at me. It remained there as my shift ended, and I climbed into my car to drive home. I decided to stop at the small grocery store a block or so away from my apartment to again grab a pre-made meal for dinner. Obviously, I didn't feel like cooking anything tonight. As I got out of my car and I walked into the store, I found myself watching everyone I went past far more closely than I ever had before. I looked to see if any of them would seemingly not notice me, or worse, would walk right through me. But as I grabbed a basket and moved first to the freezers, then the alcohol section to grab a much-needed bottle of watermelon margarita, everyone I saw moved out of my way as I walked towards them. Many of them turned their faces up to make sure that they didn't run into me, and our eyes would often meet. Seeing the recognition in their eyes as I heard the soft sound of the ancient music playing over the speakers helped quickly relieve a good portion of the tension that had coiled around my inside. But it didn't completely erase the underlying feeling of dread that had followed me from the lumberyard like a specter. As I approached the cash registers, I noticed that one of my local friends, a tall, dark-haired dude wearing glasses, was standing weighed in one aisle that had no customers. Moving quickly to it, I called out a greeting. "Hey Conrad, you open?" He looked up, and after a second, he smiled, waving me over. Hey Dalton, yep, I'm open, come on over, buddy." Setting the basket down, I removed the fajita chicken stir-fry and bottle of margarita, and I placed them on the belt, handing him the basket. "So, how have you been? We've been on different schedules recently. Haven't seen you working again till now." He chuckled. "Yeah, I could say the same about you. Yeah, management has us on a new rotation. I've only just got back my regular shift recently. What about you? How was your day?" I grimaced slightly at having to remember the events of the last 2 days, but I answered honestly. "It's been a bit of a weird day, to say the least. Hopefully tomorrow will be better.
I didn't go into details, especially with the other customers and cashier less than 15 feet away. He nodded sympathetically and then gestured to my items. Yeah, I feel that. You want a bag for this? I nodded, and then as he slid the dinner and drink into a plastic bag, an almost overwhelming need to ask him something flooded into me. Hey, can I ask you what may seem like a bit of a weird question, man? He stopped mid-action as he was turning back to the computer, tilting his head slightly at me with a curious expression. After a moment, he shrugged. Shoot, he said. I took a deep breath, feeling both foolish and afraid of what I had to vocalize. I'm not dead, am I? The question came out with a small shake to my voice. I could tell that he was not prepared for the question. He pulled back slightly, his eyes blinking rapidly behind his glasses, as if he were a computer being fed new information. A look that personified the phrase, "What in the hell?" crossed his features. Finally, after a moment, and a glance towards the back of the store where the manager's office was, he leaned over the counter and lightly smacked my shoulder before answering. You seem perfectly alive and solid to me, unless you're a zombie. His joke did it. I couldn't help but laugh as I felt the last wisps of whispering dread and tension escape out of the open sliding doors into the night. Unable to resist, I raised my arms out in front of me and moaned like I was in a George Romero flick. Brains, I muttered, causing him to snort. Oh, that's Return of the Living Dead, not Night of the Living Dead, you dolt, he chided. Shrugging my shoulders and grinning, I gestured to him. And you seem perfectly alive as well. He mirrored my shrug as he looked back at the computer. Hey, as far as I know, I'm fine. I'm better than that guy who got nailed on the side of the road a few months ago, though. Poor guy didn't even see the logging truck in the rain. Anyways, that'll be 1875. I pulled up my wallet, only half focused as I fumbled in it for a 20. Conrad's words had piqued my interest, as morbid as it was. Somebody got splattered around here. I never caught anything about it on the news or the radio. You know if it was a local or somebody passing through? At my question, he seemed to freeze in front of the register, his finger poised to open the till. After a moment, he laughed. Ah, damn it to all hell, man. I had it on the tip of my tongue, but it slipped my mind. I don't know, but I hate when that happens. The register let out a ding as it shot open, and he began to rummage in it for my change. I shrugged and slapped the counter. No, it's all good, man. Same thing happens to me more than I care to admit. He laughed, seeming to relax himself as he handed me my change and receipt, nodding gratefully at me. I picked up my bag and was about to turn away when something caught my eye. Hey dude, when did you get that scar on your neck? Conrad froze. For more than a few moments, he simply stared at me, a slightly odd, indescribable expression splashing on his face. I couldn't understand why, but seeing it as he slowly raised a hand to the side of his neck, his fingers tracing over the moon-shaped scar caused me to take a step back. He blinked a few times, his eyes seeming to glaze over, and then he snorted and chuckled, snapping back to the present. Oh, yeah, one thing that I forgot to mention to you. Couple of months ago during the day, we had one of those homeless junkies run up in here and try and rob the place. I was on, and unfortunately for me,
I was also the only cashier on at the time. He winced before finishing. Yeah, luckily, he only nicked me with the box cutter that he had. I barely felt it, just cold for a second. Thankfully, somebody called the cops, so I only had to fend him off for about a minute. Perks of working in a neighborhood called Methpire, huh? I winced at the image of somebody coming at me with a blade, and then I let out a silent thanks that somebody had been watching out for my friend that day. I raised my hand as I turned away. Hey, you'll have to tell me more about it the next time that we hang out. Anyways, I'm going home. Night. Have a good one. I heard him call after me as I walked out into the night. A few hours later, and I found myself sprawled out onto the couch, slightly tipsy from the now mostly empty bottle of margarita sitting on the kitchen counter. On TV, an old movie from the 60s was playing, though I was only half paying attention. My hand, almost on its own accord, drifted over to the end table next to me, and I found myself picking up my phone. The screen flickered to life and I saw a new notification had shown up. More than slightly loaded, I let out a drawn-out groan. Oh, great. I slurred, tapping on it. Just as I was beginning to feel like things were getting back to normal. Now what? The Facebook opened, and I saw a post had been made to my wall by Brett. My exasperation grew and I tapped the notification. The page had taken a moment longer than normal to load. Finally, it popped up and I let out a gasp of exasperated laughter. I was staring at a wall of text in all caps. Pulling myself to a sitting position and feeling the room spin slightly, I ran a face over my hand, and then I grabbed the remote and muted the TV as I squinted to focus on the words. Warning, hacker alert. To any of Dalton's friends, Eva and I need to warn you of a hacker that has taken over his account. The two of us have both received messages claiming to be him, with Eva getting a voice note that was mimicking his voice. This is very cruel play, and I don't wish to cause anybody any pain, but we needed to warn you. This hacker clearly has access to deepfake technology that allows him to simulate his voice and create pictures of him, as the new profile picture shows. Under no circumstances should you interact with him if he attempts to contact you, whether it is a message or a voice note, or even a video call. Do not reply to him. Ignore it. We are currently working with his family and Facebook to get his account memorialized and boot him out of it. I'm sorry, but it needed to be warned. Thank you and rest in peace, Dalton. The amount of exasperation and disbelief that spiked as I read and reread the post, seeing the emoji reactions with angry and sad faces at the bottom, was quickly joined by a new emotion. Anger. I stumbled to my feet, moving to the kitchen as I began to breathe heavily, the alcohol allowing me to literally begin seeing red. You gotta be kidding me, I hissed, clutching the side of the stove. This has gone too far. I don't know what's going on, but they are not bringing my family into this crap. I slammed down on the metal stove with a fist, not caring if it was past 10, and I would likely get a complaint from my neighbors. I raised my phone and tapped quickly on the contact app, scrolling down until I had reached the M section. Like hell they're going to subject my poor mother to this. A moment later, I heard the sound of the line ringing and I brought the phone to my ear. I knew that I was likely going to wake her up, but I would rather deal with an irritated mother than the alternative. After a few rings, the line picked up.
Hello?
For a moment, I froze. Mom hadn't sounded like she had just woken up. She sounded as if she hadn't slept in weeks. Worry instantly flooded me, but I kept it at bay just for now. As soon as I explained what was happening, I would ask her what was wrong. For now, though, I'd try to keep the slur out of my voice as much as I could. Hey, Mom, it's me. Look, I hate to call you so late, but I needed to let you know something. Just give me a moment to explain before you say anything. I don't know what the heck is going on, but something really messed up is happening online. People on there are either playing some really screwed up game or have completely lost their minds. I've been getting people saying things that I would rather not repeat. And I'll go into more detail when it's not almost 11 at night. And I'm not a little drunk, but if any of them get a hold of you, please just ignore whatever they say to you, alright? I just don't need them upsetting you. Finished, I allowed myself to stay quiet, to give her a moment to process what I would say. The silence on the other end of the line seemed to stretch longer than I thought it would. If it weren't for the fact that I could faintly hear the sound of her TV in the background, I would have almost have thought that the line had disconnected.
Who is this?
I froze at the question, one which had been spoken in barely a whisper. My brain short-circuited and I lost my capacity to speak for a few seconds as confusion swept over me like a tsunami. What? I managed out. The question came again.
Who is this?
This time I answered immediately. Mom, it's me. It's Dalton. The sound that came from the other end of the line after another long stretch of silence seemed to tear me from my intoxication. The sound of my mother letting out what I can only describe as a heart-wrenching sob, one that I had never heard her utter in my life. When she spoke again, I could tell that she was barely able to speak through tears.
Whoever this is cruel. This is cruel.
I felt as though the room were beginning to spin. This time it was for a completely different reason than alcohol. I felt like I had finally snapped, like I was completely losing my mind. My mother, my own mother, was almost in tears at the sound of my voice. And to hear her call me cruel felt like somebody had stabbed me in the heart. When I began to speak next, my voice was openly shaking. Mom, I don't understand. What is? She cut me off before I had a chance to finish my question, and the words she spoke made me feel as though my heart hadn't just been stabbed. It felt as if it had been ripped out.
You're not my son.
My mouth dropped open, and I pulled the phone back to stare at it for a moment before bringing it back to my ear. It took a few times to muster my will to speak. What are you saying? I managed out in barely a whisper. I felt terrified of what she'd say to me, terrified that she wouldn't say anything and hang up. I couldn't understand. What had I done to make everybody act like this towards me? She did answer.
You're not my son, whoever you are.
She said, her voice still breaking, but with the same firmness that I remembered hearing whenever I had done something wrong and got sent to my room. I began to open my mouth again, but I never had time to say anything. She spoke again, and what she said had made me feel as if the bottom had just dropped out of the world.
You're not my son. My son died 4 months ago.
It was as if every thought that I had, every emotion was wiped out in a single second.
The world stopped spinning, as did the feeling of losing my mind. But what took its place made me wish that I could have the insane feeling back. Dread is soul-crushing dread. I pulled the phone away from my ear to stare at it. Faintly on the other end of the line, I heard Mom break into another sob before speaking again.
Don't call this number again.
A moment later, the line clicked off. The phone slipped from my hand and it fell to the floor. I barely even noticed it. Nor did I notice the loud crash as my hand swept the bottle of margarita off the counter, shattering and spilling the remaining red liquid across the imitation tile. I was beginning to shake, first gently and then violently. My breathing quickened until it felt like I was hyperventilating and about to pass out at any second. I looked around at the walls as I stumbled back into the living room, my mind racing. What the hell? What the hell? What is going on? This isn't happening. This is not happening. I'm not dead. I'm not dead. I would know if I died. I pinched myself earlier and it hurt. I hit the edge of the couch with my legs, my knees buckling as I slid to the floor against it. I forced myself to speak aloud, in some vain attempt to regain my composure. No, I'm alive. I know that I'm alive. I get up, I go to work, I get paid. I've gone to work the last 4 months, not just hung around the apartment. Yeah, I know I'm a bit of a shut-in, but wait, other people saw me. Conrad in the store. Yeah, he saw me. The other customers saw me too. My neighbor and Mr. Dieter waved at me. Travis even spoke too. It felt as though somebody had thrown an ice-cold bucket of water at my face. My arms dropped to my sides as a thought wormed forward into my mind. A singular thought that made the room feel as though it were beginning to spin again. Wait, Travis? No, that can't be right. I couldn't have talked to Travis because, well, Travis. I began to shake again as I tried to force away the end of that thought. But try as hard as I might, I couldn't keep myself from whispering it aloud. Travis died of a heart attack last year. Along with that, it came another thought. Another crystal clear one that made me pull my legs tight up against me, trying to stop myself from shaking. And Mr. Dieter, he died 5 years ago. Yet another horrifying dot connected in my mind. I hadn't seen Conrad in 4 months, and only just tonight came across him, after he had told me about his near miss with the robber. The world contracted in my vision and I forced my voice out, my voice shaking as hard as I was. I'm not dead. Right?